All right, podcast listeners, we are in for another installment, and I am very, very happy to be talking to our next guest on the Reasonings with Heru show. And this is a brother who I've been aware of for many years in the work that he was doing in terms of publications and letting people in our communities just know about what was happening in real time in terms of a worldview towards unity, cohesion, and positive culture. And that was the ghetto times. And that was during my days when I was a professional poet. And you couldn't be a professional poet in the United States without doing work in New York City. And so when I was in New York City doing shows, I would always see these newspapers, the Ghetto Times, and check it out. And it was hard hitting and had a positive vibe, you know. And then I would hear the brother also being interviewed on Brother Kidi Awadu's show, Lib Radio. And so that's how I became familiar with this brother through his work with the Ghetto Times. And then I had seen that he had a new iteration of himself in terms of going into the financial field and breaking down cryptocurrency and letting people know that this is something that people should get into. And this has been probably close to a decade that I've known that the brother had been on that type of vibe. And so definitely in tribute to his work, this is what I'm wearing, my Bitcoin Beach t-shirt, you know what I'm saying, from El Salvador. As I've been involved in cryptocurrency and Bitcoin for over a decade as well. So it's always good to meet brothers who are on the same page and doing some of the same things. So without further ado, we have the powerful, 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 my brethren, your brethren, Mbwebe Ishangi. And the brother's on, and he is a financial therapist. So we gonna get into all of it. You know what I'm saying? We gonna get into the whole vibes, all of them lyrics, you know? Yeah, man. So, brother Mbwebe, man, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good, bro. Just it's a pleasure, man, to just, we've been connecting for about a little bit over half a year and just, having as well knowing about you, but to now to actually, virtually instead of live and direct, but virtually direct, we've been able to connect and just, the brain power that has been shared. I mean, it's made me want to sharpen my edge of the sword that much more. And so it's just all about divine timing, man. And again, having known of each other for so long, for us to finally meet, like it was just like, yeah, there was no introduction needed. You know what I mean? It was just like a clean gel. You know what I mean? So, but I feel great in being in this space. Happily and honored to spend some time with you and your listeners. And just just getting a vibe with you is always chill. So, yeah, man, I'm here and
Yeah,
present.
yeah, man. So before we get into your history, let's just talk about where you are now, and then we're going to go all the way back to how you got to be who you are, right? So it's important for the people to know all the things that you're involved in now, what your worldview is, some of the practical things that you're doing. Could you just break down who is Brother Mbwebe in 2022? What's he doing? What's he offering to the worldwide community? What is his expertise? What is his experience and all that? And then we're going to backtrack and, basically give a people a blueprint as to how you became who you were. And that's what I like to do in this show.
Yeah, we're gonna reverse engineer it. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
Word. So yeah, where I am today, actually I'm less than a week from my 53rd birthday, solar return. So, it's one thing that my cousin said to me a few years ago was that we have, at the time it was like we have 25 good summers left, you know what I'm saying,
Wow.
in our lives. And not that you're gonna die in 25 years, but the youth and vitality that we have, I have less time ahead of me than I do behind. And, where I am right now is really about fully executing uh, what I've learned over these years. Because the biggest thing for me was always, I don't want to be that person who just has all this mental knowledge and didn't manifest anything, or there's no
Right.
tangibles. So the things that I've been, where I am right now is I'm heavily, heavily involved in the both spiritual and of course physical, but then there's the other part of the economical liberation of our people exclusively. The work I've been doing, I've created a crypto woke financial sustainability movement, which is basically a movement of such where I'm trying to galvanize, not trying, I am galvanizing people to understand the importance of not only being culturally sound, but being financially sound, because then you can actually live the culture because you can pay for it yourself. You don't have to ask anyone to do it for you. So my expertise is primarily in the space of cultural resuscitation, spiritual resuscitation, as well as economics. So
Mhm.
I deal with finances on a day-by-day basis, every day. Like that's important for me to be able to own my time. If I own my time, then I can manifest the things that I truly want to see in this lifetime while with my remaining time. So
Mhm.
finances is something I teach. Um, I'm a writer. I've been writing books for, my first book was in 97, but my latest book is Apata Piston Intergenerational Wealth Planning, which you may see right here in the backdrop.
Yeah,
Um,
you can hold it up. Hold it up. Let's see
yeah,
it.
yeah. I have a copy right here. Um, this is my latest book,
Okay.
Apata Piston Intergenerational Wealth Planning. And this is, about finances, something that I never would have thought I would ever even think about writing, because I write about culture, I write about history,
Mhm.
but I understand that everything has a historical pretext to it. So that's what got me into learning about finances. We'll discuss about that later on. But my biggest thing of where I am right now is about tangible manifestation. You know, I'm all about self-reliance, all about being able to even potentially be all great if need be. I'm that, taking the old school mentalities of our grandparents who had cellars full of food and, water and things in case something goes down. And not because it's a doomsday mentality, but it's a self-reliant mentality, because as more and more we become dependent on this grid, we're seeing the grid is not providing us what we actually need. It's giving us things we don't need. And there's that saying that if you don't make a plan for yourself, someone's made a better plan for you. And if you don't, and what they have in store for you is not going to be much in your favor. So it's really about the ownership of being here, passing on more than just book knowledge, something that is tangible that our children can actually hold, touch, taste, feel, and then pass it on to the incurring generations.
Yeah. One of the things too, I know that the viewership is not lost on the fact that you said you're 53, right? So obviously you know more than just financial stuff and historical stuff. You know some one or two things about health, because most 53-year-olds don't look like us, right?
Absolutely.
Because I turned 50 this year as well.
Word.
And I know you have a background in athletics and track and all of
Mhm.
that, and you keep fit. And that's something we should talk about as well, because we want to present ourselves as, well-rounded human beings and well-rounded men, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of it too. And so for you to say 53, I didn't even know that you were 53 because I don't see any gray hair. And here I am, got gray hair all over the place.
We plucking, bro. We
But yeah,
plucking.
you pluck.
They there and they up
Yeah,
in here too, but
yeah, okay. Yeah,
yeah, they,
but obviously you've been taking care of yourself, man. You look great for 53, particularly within someone who grew up in America in New York City. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, bro. Like that's the thing too is and I'm proud to say before I was like, damn, I'm getting old, but I'm like, nah. When I think of people, my uncles and men in my family, when they were in their 40s, they look like they were in their 60s, unfortunately.
Hmm.
And that's the meaning of my name. My name's an acronym. Mbwebe stands for mind and body working equally, exudes blessings eternal. So if I keep my
Oh,
mind,
okay.
my body, my spirit working together, those blessings will always come. So I have to keep these things in sync. Mainly because I have been a worried about, pain and health issues since I was in the second grade. So I've always felt like I was not going to be that person if I could help it, not being healthy, and it took me on that journey to do what's necessary so that you can actually reap those benefits. You know what I mean?
Excellent, man. So let's get into it, bro.
Word.
Let's get into it. So, where we born?
I was born in Akron, Ohio. Born
Oh,
in
you
Akron,
you born in the
Ohio.
Midwest, huh?
Yeah, I was
Midwest
born in Akron,
United States.
Ohio,
Okay.
but grew up a lot in New York.
Okay.
And for me, the biggest part of my upbringing was family. And it's interesting because my grandfather, I remember my grandfather on my mother's side, I was a single home, my father wasn't involved in my life. And my mother was really everything to me,
Mm-hmm.
and my sisters. And she did things that men, were doing back then, second, third jobs, taking care of our family and everything. But my grandfather was a farmer. He would, in his backyard, he had a farm, and he had all types of things back there. And I see myself today as like, wow, even though I'm in New York City and I don't have a backyard, you know, Brooklyn to be exact, I'm growing things indoors. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I feel like there's that circle that's coming back. Where I'm realizing, like these things are innately in you, and it's from a self-sustainable mindset. Why not be able to produce your own stuff? So, yeah, I mean, having exposure to just the simple things that city life kind of gets you, it kind of clouds it, and you get involved in like all the other stuff that the city brings, so you kind of lose touch about the basic things, because I know the convenience of what big cities bring you, it robs you of you doing for yourself. All of these
Absolutely.
corner stores and bodegas, and and even though the food ain't good, you're gonna go and get that, opposed to think, oh, why don't I just grow my own herbs? Why don't I just consider doing this? But again, it's a transition. It's a period that you go through.
So you went to grade school in New York or Ohio?
So I went to grade school in Ohio, and then when I went to high school, my mother had me go to. I went to high school in Ohio as well, and because New York City is out here is kind of crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
You got
Yeah,
all types of attractions that you don't want to be a part of. So yeah,
yeah.
I went to high school in Ohio, and my ran track in Ohio, and got a scholarship to run at the University of Pittsburgh. So I spent about 6 years, for 2 more years after I graduated college, in Pittsburgh running, and then came back home to Brooklyn after that.
Okay, okay. Um, where your parents from? They're from United
Uh,
States or from other
yeah,
places in the world?
US. And the interesting thing about it is, especially towards my um, adult, well, later teenage years, I was hanging around, especially when I was in college, I was hanging around nothing but, Rasta. I was around a bunch of people from the Caribbean. Some of my best friends are all from that. So I got highly inundated with that, and was actually told that, you know, part of my father's side, there may be some Caribbean lineage. I'm not sure yet, because that's still
Mm.
an anomaly, but I've always had an affinity towards Africa without knowing it as a youth. I've always had an affinity towards just about our people outside of America, because I knew that there were some things that they had that we didn't have here, and that was mainly the culture, the drum, the
Right.
name, even though we had our things here, but there was just some things I knew there were some differences that attracted me to wanting to learn more about that culture.
Right. So by the time you're in high school, let's talk about um your process of developing the worldview that you have now in terms of a global or Pan-African worldview. Uh, when did that start developing?
Um, to be honest, as little as 2 years old,
Mm,
I used to get these visions, and I used to get these subliminal, I won't say yeah, there were sublime messages that would come into my head about, I remember when I was about 2 or 3 years old, and I was in a driveway pushing my neighbor on a big wheel. And this message came to me that said, be proud that you're African.
mm,
I'm 2 years old, never even knew what that word was. Now I kind of was like, huh? And it said it again, be proud that you're African. I said, okay. And I just kept playing.
mm,
So I later, it wasn't until I got to college that I started to realize some things that had happened to me when I was a child. When KRS-One came to my college, my junior year, 1990. He did a lecture called Revolution of the Mind. And that in that lecture, at the time, I was trying to practice Christianity, you know, because everybody else was. You know, I'm at track meets and I'm doing the crucifix before the race and all that, doing all those gestures and whatnot because everybody else is doing it.
Right.
But I'm still trying to be a positive brother. You know, I'm thinking this is what you do, you know. So he came to that lecture and he literally pulled the rug from under me about the conceptual idea of religion and believing in something. And the first thing that really got me is when he said, open up the Bible. And it's interesting because he's not saying that now these days, but back then he was a little bit more, you know, hardcore. But he said, open up the Bible. And when you see the first few pages, what do you see? You'll see re-edited version. And he said, who has the power to edit God's word? And so that made me start thinking, word, like, yeah. And why are there so many different versions? Like, it just opened up this Pandora box of questions.
Questions that you never really contemplated.
Never really thought about, right? Yeah. So I'm thinking, wow. So the very next day, so after that lecture, I went back to my dorm. I'm pacing in my room with the Bible in my hand. Like, I'm just like, oh God, he just messed my head up, right? What am I going to do? And then without thinking, I took the Bible and threw it in the trash. Now that to me broke my, you know, my connection, because at the time, any Christian would tell you, don't put your Bible on the floor. That's close to hell, right? But logistically, you think, well, if you're on the 14th floor, then you didn't put it on the floor, you put it on the 13th floor. Like you're never really on the ground level. So I started realizing the type of mental psyches, the psychosis I've been put through without question and buying into these things. The very next day, I'm going to class and I am approached. I'm not BSing, and I wrote about all this in this book, my first book, Analytical Cogitations. I was approached by men from about 5 different religious sects in this one walk. It was a less than a mile walk to my next class. I was approached by a Christian. I was approached by Hare Krishnas. I was approached by some Jews, and everybody was asking me, trying to recruit me into their faith. And I found it ironic, like, well, how is this happening the day after I throw my Bible away? The very next day. Never seen these people before in my life. And now I'm being approached by these people asking me these things. And it was one person that got my attention at the end, and he was an Ansar Muslim. And he said, I heard you.
Ansar Allah community. I know the whole lives, man.
Yeah. So he said to me, I heard you threw your Bible away last night. And when he said that, I stuttered step, like, wait, what? Because nobody knew that. Nobody, not even my lady at the time knew that. That was me. So that drew that connection. And for a period of time, I was studying under Dr.
So he just knew?
Well, we befriended each other. And
I'm saying, what caused him to say that to you?
Bro, he said he'd been sitting there waiting for me.
Well, that's kind of interesting.
And I'm like, is this dude trying to, I'm thinking, he's trying to sell me something. Some incense, some bean pot, whatever. You know, I'm like, all right. But then I was like, but he still said something that, so I was intrigued. Like, how did he know this? So I'm gonna play this out. And he actually taught me some things as far as like rethinking. It was the first time then at that point that I was exposed to Farrakhan. And I'd never seen a Black man really speak, you know, against white folks the way he does publicly and you know, unapologetically. So I'm being inundated with these new perspectives because I was shielded as an athlete, you know, as a student athlete. It's just, you know, running in classes. I didn't have social time too much. So now I'm being inundated with this information about a Black man's perspective standing up against, and I knew what racism was. I've experienced it, but I was like, this is, I guess, the way it is. And then I see people speaking out against it. I'm learning about the Panthers and all this. And I was a Africana Studies major at the University of Pittsburgh, but wasn't exposed to Garvey. You know what I'm saying? So I understood it then. Okay, these are institutes of higher training. They control what you're going to learn. But nevertheless, you know, that to me put me on this path of realizing I need to start questioning, you know, everything, and befriending this brother took me on a path of almost joining Ansars, then jumping to 5% Nation. And then I was like, you know what? I saw they're not for me in regards to organized religions, because I'm a rebel. I can't follow rules, you know what I mean? Like man-made rules anyway. So
Well, I
I was
think,
like,
yeah, man, I think it's like like what you're describing is a healthy process that I think everyone should go through,
mhm,
right? A lot of times, as children, we're just given things and we just
absolutely.
end up carrying it on, and we grow old without questioning anything. That's
Right.
why, like, even the people who say that they believe that the earth is flat, I actually like those people. Because why? The reason why I like those people is because they're questioning something that they don't feel has been proven to them.
Right.
Because most people who say that the earth is round, they're really just copying what they've heard from someone who they think is, the authority, right? So most people are just parrots, right? And if you say it strong and long enough, it becomes the truth to people in their minds, right? Because, I remember one time I was sitting with somebody, I was having dinner with somebody, and she was talking about how there was a certain artist, it was a reggae artist, and she was saying that how she lost respect for him because he was trying to convince her that the world wasn't round, like the earth wasn't round. So I just kind of humored the conversation. I was like, so what did he say? How did he try to prove it? And so, he had his own reasoning. And then my question was, so what did you say to him? And she's like, well, everyone knows that the world is round. Like, this is ridiculous. This isn't even something we need to debate. But then I pressed it a little further. I said, but you have to have more evidence than saying everyone knows. And she's like, Haru, the earth is round. She said, but how do we know that? Like, how do we know that, and how do we observe it? How do we, like, what are the modalities for really proving to ourselves that the earth is round, And then you have to start looking at people like what they say in the Greek, like the Aristophanes, who figured out like the circumference of the earth based on, stick shadows, basically, right? And what happened was is that, like, when you hold a stick on the ground, based on the length of the shadow of the stick, it actually follows formulas of a circle in terms of the length based on the time and the movements of the earth around the sun during, so then you could start plugging in those numbers and start figuring out, oh, actually the formula to figure out the length of this is really based on the formula of a circle. So then that way you can impute that the earth is actually a circle and not like a straight, like a flat. But most people don't know that, right? Most people are just repeating what they've heard. Most people don't have telescopes and look at planets, and they don't do it. They're just indoctrinated that the earth is round, but they have no logical way of proving it besides everyone knows it, or that's just what everyone says. And so that's why I like the earth is flat people, because they challenge the people who believe, even if they're right, the other people who believe that the earth is round, and I believe that the earth is round, right, through my own observations, right? And then looking at the other planets and seeing that they're round too, and a bunch of other things, right? But most people, if you ask them, why do you believe that the earth is round? They can't tell you.
They can't. Yeah.
They can't tell you. Like, just basic things. They can't, why are there 365 days? Why not 300? Why not? You get what I'm saying? We're just made to accept things. Like, they told you that this book is the word of God, and we're just made to accept it. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's edited, this and that, we accept the foundational premise that God spoke to someone and the person wrote it down. Like, we accept it. You know what I'm saying? And then no matter what is in it, because what you're talking about is actually an important journey for every single human being when you're told that this is the truth. Well, the truth is always happy to be investigated. Right? The truth is never upset.
Right.
At questions. You get what I'm saying? Only lies are upset at questions because they might get found out. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So, like, people would say they're Christian. All my life, I met people Christian, and I would ask them one question. I said, so have you read the whole Bible from the beginning to the end? And be honest. And most of them will say no. And my question is, why not? Since you say it's the word of God and it's the most important thing to you, why wouldn't you have read it from front to back? Since it's the most important book ever, it must not be that important to you if you're not going to read it from front to back. Okay, so now you haven't read it from front to back. How do you know what you believe in? Because you say that you believe in this whole book, but you don't even know what's in it. What
Right.
if I told you, I don't know, somebody was swallowed by a whale? What if I told you, you know what I'm saying? Like, and if you didn't
Yeah.
know the story of Jonah, you'd be like, oh, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Right. But because it's in there, all of a sudden now it's true. You know what I
Well,
mean?
that's
Like,
the
what
thing.
about talking snakes?
Yeah.
You believe that snakes talk? You believe the snakes have vocal cords? Like, you have to start interrogating those ideas and concepts and all of these things that are encapsulated within a book that you are just told as a foundational truth that this is the word of God without you having to discover it for yourself as to why. And that's why I'm saying that, like, I don't mean to go on too long, but what you said about the Ansarus and all that and how you almost became one, this
Yeah.
was the same journey I went through in university where I almost became a Muslim because I had gotten away from the Christian thing because I read the Bible and I was like, nah, especially the Old Testament. It was just basically came like a land grab, a book that justifies a land grab. You know what I mean? And when I read
Right.
about Moses and what he did, if his name wasn't Moses, he would be a megalomaniacal genocider, like, you know, killing women and children, keeping virgins for yourselves. That's what he told the Midianites. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
who else could get away with that? You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
So for me, it didn't resonate with me as something that was something that I would adhere to as a life, as a book that would be the greatest book for me in terms of my life, right? So now, then I was like, Islam. I liked Islam because I liked the discipline. I noticed the difference between Muslims and Christians, that I found that my Muslim friends were more disciplined than my Christian friends. You know what I mean? Like, they wouldn't drink alcohol. They would pray, maybe not 5 times a day, but they would take time and actually do it, which let me know, okay, these people got a little bit more discipline. What is it about this, you know, religion that causes that? And then I start reading the Quran. I almost became Muslim. I used to sleep in a mosque. Yeah, I used to sleep in the mosque. I participated in Ramadan and then also breaking fast. Um, then I read the Quran and then I actually saw that, like, it was okay, like slavery was okay in the Quran, as long as you're not Muslim. You can enslave another person as long as they're not Muslim.
Right.
That didn't resonate with me because I'm very anti-slavery to my core. You
Absolutely.
get what I'm saying? So I was like, oh, that's not for me. Because I read it. I'm reading it and they're talking about your left hand and this and that, because that refers to like your slave and this and that. And I'm reading this, and I'm just like, wow. So this is supposed to be the word of God, and this God of this Bible, like, endorses slavery, then I can't mess with it. You know what I mean? So I was like, that's it for me. But you have to do your own interrogation.
That's what it comes down to. And that, I think that that's where it brings in the whole thinker of, there's that type of thinkers. There's those 3 types. There's that, literal, there's that inferential and an evaluative thinker. That literal is going to just, like you said, I heard it from somebody else. I'm never going to do diligence. I'm just going to regurgitate. But that evaluative thinker, which I felt like I had always been, was like, you know what? Let me go and do some diligence on my own. And beyond, even if so what it's read, because what is a book? A book is another person's thoughts, right? So I wasn't like, just because it's written doesn't mean it's word, if that's what it is. But does it resonate? Does it sit well with me? And that's the thing that got me out of each of those things. I approached each religion honestly and just, okay, let me see what it is. And then as soon as I saw what it could be, I felt the ancestors were always there to show me, okay, now here's the bad. And then you make a decision. And I was like, okay, I got what I got out of this, move to the next. I almost became, like I said, an Ansar. And what did it for me was the imbalance of and being raised by women. I always felt like, women were mistreated. And I saw that in abundance in the Ansars and also 5% Nation, and as well as and Nation Islam. So I was like, okay, no judgment on y'all. That's what y'all do, but it's not for me, to have the way women are treated, because I just can't see treating a woman in a way that I wouldn't treat my own mother. So, it was, it's that thing of, learning about it. But it wasn't until my senior year that my professor, Rob Penny, God rest his soul, is he sent me, he was always wearing his Marcus Garvey button. And I have wrote this piece, my very first article I've ever written. It was called Quest for an Afrocentric Society, Society and Afrocentric Quest. And when he wrote what he wrote on there was that you're close but not there yet, because it was Islamic based. It was full of Islamic, well, more so full of Dr. York stuff. You know what I'm saying? Mahoda Pelhor, all this stuff, right?
Mhm.
And I didn't
That's
understand it.
for those who don't know,
Yeah,
Dr. Malachi York was the founder of the Ansarullah community, amongst other things, the Nuwapians as well. And now he's in prison,
yeah,
charged with child molestation.
yeah,
Some people say that it's not true. Some people say it's very true. I ain't getting into all of that.
right.
But that is what he's in prison for right now. But he was the founder of the Ansarullah community, which was also closely related in terms of the young hip hop community in the 80s and 90s, Ansarullah, 5%, Nation of
Yeah,
Gods on Earth, and all that with Clarence
yeah.
13X and all that. So that was part of the cultural
Man, it was the
landscape
days.
during those days. Yeah.
Those were the days, bro. That was the
Yeah.
days, man. But yeah,
Brooklyn, mainly like
yeah,
Brooklyn,
yeah.
yeah.
Loved it, man. That was like I felt absolutely 100% proud of, I still do, but like in the culture, brothers was on the streets building, like we was spitting information and knowledge and awareness, and I love that part of it. uh but yeah, you want to evolve, you want more,
You
and
put
that
on
was
the, you put on the white robes and all that?
I didn't get that far, but so
Okay.
the Ansars, we were wearing fatigues at the time.
Oh, y'all wearing fatigues.
He was wearing fatigues, so I
Okay.
was
I
like,
only seen the white robes. So that was
huh?
before. I've only seen the white robes.
I think that was
That
afterwards.
was afterwards.
I
Okay.
think that was afterwards because yeah, at the time, because yeah, like you said, it was so hip hop influenced. Yeah, brothers was wearing the full guard, but it was in fatigues and camouflage, and but then they'd have on Timbs and Jordans. It was just like
That's
it
New
was
York.
a confusion. It was a confusion. Like, yeah, well, wait a minute, you say you about the white man, but you wearing all this stuff, So it
Right.
was kind of like that confusion. Um, but nevertheless, I was attracted to the information. I had never, and interesting enough, my father, even though he wasn't in my life, one of the few things he left at the house that I grew up in was he left the book Moses Speaks. And I was like, so he was a Garveyite for a second,
Mhm.
So that was I guess a seed planted, so to speak, that I later retrieved in my collegiate years. And that's when I went through that metamorphosis, from KRS doing that to me thinking about, oh, who am I? What am I about? And of course, when you learn these things, the first people you want to speak to is your family. Like,
Right.
yo, did you know this? Did you know that? And they looked at me all like, yo, you the black sheep already. Now you didn't really
Right.
messed it up.
Right. Right.
But rather than be deterred, um, I was all in. I wanted to know who I was, who I am. And even before knowing what Sankofa the word is, that was what I was doing. I was learning about my past so that I could move forward. And I'm thankful for that because that was a foundational time. I was 20.
Right.
So had I known this when I was 10, it would have been much better. But now I'm 20 and I'm trying to be both a man as far as, okay, you're out of school. Now you got to take care of yourself. But then I'm grappling with the fact that, this society is corrupt. We've been lied to.
Right.
So how do I don't want to wear a mask.
Right.
How do I live in both identities
Right.
and
And be true to
still
who
be
you are.
sound?
Yeah, and be
Yeah,
true to who you
yeah.
are.
So
Let me just backtrack a little bit.
yeah.
Because I know people watching might want a little bit more on this. You said something very provocative in the sense that I stated why I didn't become a Muslim because of the slavery issue
Mhm,
that the Quran talks about.
mhm.
Uh, that's okay with the Quran. You said that you didn't like the treatment of women. What did you see specifically
Yeah.
in terms of the treatment of women that you didn't like? And was it something that was specific to a group or men practicing, or was it more doctrinal in terms of like the doctrine of the book that they go by, which would be the Quran? Was there
Right.
something in the Quran that you saw that was like, nah, I'm not really feeling that in terms of, that's not just to women, or was it the behavioral aspects of what people were doing on the ground?
Yeah, I would say it was the latter more so. Even though I was reading the book and learning about the Quran, I was dealing with real time people and I was seeing
Mhm.
the contradictions. And just like in church, when I got baptized when I was 18. Again, trying to figure this thing out and do what I guess I'm supposed to do.
Okay.
And as soon as I got baptized, I was exposed to all the corruptness, the deacon spending money on this for this Cadillac and this and that. So I was exposed to these things. I said, I don't want no part of that. So when it came to, I didn't officially join a mosque so the steps were Ansar Muslim, then 5% Nation. And then when I went to the Nation, it was another, but I didn't join any of these organizations. That was kind of like window shopping, so to speak. So I spent a lot of time with Ansars, and to the point where we were praying every day. And then the sister I was seeing at the time brought her in on it. And one of the first actions I saw, so I'll give you an example. I don't want to put the business out there, but this is what it is, right?
Right.
So
Just
there's this
keeping it
thing
real.
there's this thing called the green room, right? I don't know if it's still in concept, whatever, but the green room is a place where it's supposed to be the room where couples go to copulate and to create a family. Initially, this is what the brothers is teaching me. It's all righteous. Everything is right. Blah,
This
blah,
is
blah,
like
right?
in the mosque or in the personal home?
This is in this sect, this group, and when we say mosque in Brooklyn, it wasn't an actual, it was an apartment. You know what I'm saying? It was
right.
hood.
So it was a central place that
Yes.
people go and worship.
Yes.
Right? So that's what I'm calling a mosque, because a mosque can be anything, right? As long as
Got you.
it's designated for that. So
Yeah.
there's a central. This isn't a room in your house. This
No.
is they had a copulation room in their central meeting place.
This is what I was told. I've never been there.
Okay,
This is what I was told.
Got it.
Right. So as I got more closer to this brother, and you might know this, when people are in something and they trying to pull you in, they're telling you all the bad things you're doing and how great things are on their end.
Right.
But then as you get closer, they start to tell you, man, I miss doing that. I miss being able to go to the club. I miss being able to do that. Because again, there was a human element to it. Correct. So I started to learn that this green room wasn't just for that. It was a place that, brothers went and got their groove on. So I was like, okay, I'm not mad about that, because brothers like women, I like women. Right. But it was taking something that I thought was sacred, and it actually was more than that, or was something, it was something other than that. And then the other thing that really did it for me.
And it wasn't for like marriage or purposes of family. It was more like a hotel, it was like kind of like a whorehouse type of thing.
It was getting it in. Yeah, it was getting it in.
So it's that type of vibe. Okay.
Yeah. And it just, it kind of shocked me, because I was like, yo, wait a minute, y'all supposed to be. And I'm not saying it's nothing, if you're down with that.
No, yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
But just tell me that up front. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the thing that really did it for me also was that in one point, it was my first prayer with them, Ansars. And 6 o'clock, we didn't even have a rug or anything, so it was our first time. But they said they invited us to join, me and my lady at the time. And so we're standing next side by side. And so as I kneel down and she's right beside me to kneel down, he barks at her. No, get behind him. Just yelled at her. And she didn't even know any better, but she did it, because again, this was something we didn't know about or whatever.
Right.
But I was looking at her like, you don't address a person like that person.
Right. It puts you in a tight situation.
Absolutely.
You don't want someone talking to your lady like that, but at the same time, you want to be respectful of their norms and mores and all of that. But you wish he would have just handled it a little bit better.
And I would have liked an explanation why. Why. And so that conversation came later. Like, what's the position? Why did she have to be behind me?
And that was your first foray into Islamic ways, right? So okay. Yes, so that's very interesting. So you never had like Muslim friends before that or anything like that. So your introduction to Islam is through the Ansar-Ullah community, which is even like a twist of Sunni Islam or Orthodox Islam and all of that. Yeah, it's a twist on it based on whatever the leader is saying, right? But okay, so you're completely unaware of the fact that they pray even in separate rooms. A lot of times men and women pray in separate rooms. You're not aware of any of this. You're just coming in completely green. Okay.
Yeah. And so that's what threw me off, because again, I'm raised by my mother and my sisters. So I hold them at this esteem.
Mhm.
And I look at my father and men like my father that, pretty much chose not to be a part of it, that any man that looks at a woman as subservient to them, I had an issue with that
Right.
because that's not the way I was raised. And it was
Right.
something new to me. So that impaired my ability to see, okay, this is something that I want to be a part of. And then there was some couple other things that happened along the lines, but it made me realize that I don't do well with being with man-made rules. Someone
Right.
saying you got to do this, you got to wear that, you got to sell this, you got to like, nah, I'm not. That's not what I'm doing. And what does this have to do with praising this deity? This
Right.
God. You know what I'm saying? Am I praying you? Am I appeasing you or this God? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So that made me, really question these things. And that made me move into the realms of being a free thinker. Like, okay, I could take a little bit of everything else and develop my own conceptual ideas of what being godlike is. And I tell you, it's made me feel a lot more freer about it because I'm able to evolve. I'm not stuck in this box that I have to remain in based upon these standards or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
you know, I do have my issues about people that have, politicized spirituality,
Sure.
with these rules, when they prey on, especially when they prey on women, young kids,
Mhm.
young ladies. I just had issues with that, and I didn't see myself aligning with that. But
Yeah.
again, that to me moved me towards eventually making it into learning about Marcus Garvey, which even though he was a Christian, he didn't really push that
Right.
religion. It was more so about the work, the necessity of us reclaiming ourselves and being self-reliant and independent. So that
Mhm.
to me was more my angle. That was more the things that I was intrigued and interested in.
And did you break away from Ansarullah cold turkey, or was it a process?
Oh, it was easy, bro. Like it was easy. Well, so all right. So I mentioned, and this is where it's interesting because there was a lot that I learned, not necessarily through their teaching, but because I was exposed to a new way of thinking. I started to remember things as a child. As I said earlier, I had some encounters as a child about, spiritual experiences. Um, and so there was an experience that I had through the tutorship of this brother who was an Ansar Muslim. And he was just, it got so interesting. I stopped going to class and track practice. I was skipping class. I was ended at the time I had a cracked femur. So I was going to rehab, but I stopped going to rehab and we would spend hours upon hours just reasoning, right?
Mhm.
So I did that for about 3 weeks straight. And I didn't understand what spiritual fatigue is. But spring break had came. This is an incident that happened. Spring break had came, and I went to Philly, where my lady at the time, where she's from. And we took a bus trip, Greyhound bus trip to Philly. And when I got to Philly, I was spiritually fatigued, but I had my first major spiritual encounter. And it was at the bequest or hands of what I was being taught through Ansar. So what happened is I went through this thing where if you can envision being on a roller coaster and you're going to sleep and you feel like you're gliding and you go a little deeper, like a little drop, like if you're a big drop down a hill, and then you even out and you go a little deeper. So I know I was going down levels. And I don't know if it was a dream or if it was in real life or whatever, but I was going through something. So anyway, and again, I speak in depth about it in my book, Analytical Connotations. But when I woke up, so to speak, I was in this other place. And the place I was at, the room I was sleeping in at the house in Philly, if there's a TV there, that was there, but it was snow. There was no actual show on. But the walls were different. And I knew I was in a different place. I was in a cave because I could hear water dripping and I could hear flames flickering. And the light of the flame was beating on the wall. So I saw the rock. So I'm like, okay, where am I? Right. So at that time, I'm laying down in my bed
Are
and
you
I
like
have a
half asleep or what? You're awake?
yeah,
Asleep?
it's like I don't know
You're
what they
in and
call it.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here and I'm there, right? So the view is like right now letterbox. So I'm frozen. I have sleep paralysis. I can't move, but I can see. And the top gets cut off like up here at the screen. I could see this bottom of the bed. That's where I was laying. And to the right of me, I started seeing this cloak, this person in a cloak that was gliding towards me. And it was cut off at the neck. So I couldn't, the screen cuts off the neck. I could only see the shoulders and the torso that got cut off by the bed. So it's gliding towards me, right? And then abruptly, I'm awakened by my girlfriend at the time. And she's hysterical. She's like, look, and she was sleeping in another room down the hall. She's like, something told me to come and wake you up right now. I'm like, what? I'm like, okay, all right. So I'm like, okay. I got up, stayed up for a little bit, and I was like, all right, something strange is happening, but I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna stay up for a little bit. And then I stayed up for a little while, started falling asleep again. Same roller coaster, drip, drip, dip, dip. I wake up again. This thing is in a pause state. And as soon as I get to that place again, it starts gliding towards me again. This time it does a military left turn and it slams its hands on the bed. When it slams its hands on the bed.
So hold on a second.
Yeah.
Where's your girlfriend at this point?
Another room down the hall.
This is after she came in or before she came in?
So the first time, so she's always sleeping in the other room.
Okay.
Because we're in her mother's house. Okay. So the first time she's in her own room, she comes down and wakes me up. She goes back to her room to go back to bed. Okay. I'm in the room by myself again. And I start to fall asleep again. And
so when she woke you up the first time, though, when she came the first time, you didn't tell her about what you saw? You didn't say nothing?
I didn't, because I was like, I didn't understand what was going on. She just said, I don't know what it is, but something just told me you need to wake up right now. So I was like, oh, okay. All right, whatever, right? So she goes back to her room. I'm like, I'm gonna be okay. I'm all right. And I was scared as fuck. Excuse my language, but I was scared, right? So I go through the thing again. And again, I wake up, the thing comes, makes the left turn, slams his hands on the bed. And as soon as he slammed her hands on the bed, she is slapped me awake again, crying, screaming, you need to get up now. I don't know what it is. You need to get up right now. And I'm like, okay. So I stand up and start shouting. Like, and mind you, we have been dealing with paranormal, metaphysical. I've been talking about 3 weeks on this deep stuff with the Ansars, right? So I'm like shouting on the air, you trying to get me, can't kill me, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what I got to say, but it felt like Freddy Krueger. Like, this is really some, I can't go to sleep. This thing is trying to get me in my sleep, right? And I remember the hands that slammed on the bed were, the setting was black and white, but I knew that the hands were a dark burgundy and it had black claws. So I'm bugging out like, there's some demon after me, right? So I told her what was going on. I was like, well, how did you know? And she's like, I don't know, something came in me and said, you got to get up and wake him up right now. So I couldn't wait to get back to school. This is, again, my junior year in college. So I can't wait to get back to Pittsburgh to meet with this brother, to tell him what happened to me. And so when I get back to Pittsburgh, I finally meet up with him and I'm hysterical, like, because I'm pissed. I'm like, yo, what you got me involved in? You know what I'm saying? So he's like, wait a minute, calm down, sit down. I'll tell you what happened. This brother broke down what happened to me without me telling him.
But this is the same one who said you threw away your Bible. Is that the same brother?
That was,
that's a different brother?
Yes.
That's the same brother.
Same brother.
So how is he so accurate?
Bruh, to this day, we had a falling out in the end. I was never able to get closure on that.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
I took it for what it was, right? But he broke down, he started painting the setting. Were you in a cave? I said, yeah. He said, did you see a light flickering, a flame? I said, yeah. He said, did you hear water dripping? I said, yeah. He said, did you see some walk toward you? I said, yeah. Everything he's saying, I'm crying right now because I'm bugging out. Like, how does he know this shit? Right. And so he basically said, he gave me a name that I didn't remember, unfortunately. He gave me a name of this alleged demon. And I got...
Oh, we're freezing up.
I know about this demon because this demon came and killed my girlfriend, and I saw it happen in her sleep. I saw her die in her sleep. So I was like, okay, he got me in some shit that I don't even know. I don't even know if I can go to sleep. But the remedy, I meant to tell you, the remedy was after it happened, and I stayed up for another 2 days, and I was already tired. But I stayed up that night because I played music. weird, right? I played music, and the music, it was some deep tracks, and it kept, for some reason, they say music soothes the savage beast. And for some reason, I was not encountered. And I woke up the next day after sleeping for about 12 hours, and woke up refreshed. So I realized that how did I get to this space is because I mentioned we were building for like 3 weeks straight. I wasn't going to class. We were barely eating. We were just going in, talking about crazy shit. And I reached the realm of spiritual fatigue. So I always tell folks, next time you're near someone that you love and they're asleep, lift their eyelids up while they're asleep without waking them. And if you lift their eyelids up while they're asleep, you can't don't awaken them. Why don't they see you? Because basically we go somewhere. Every time we go to sleep, we go somewhere. Our consciousness here gets somewhat shut off and we end up somewhere else. Right. And so the question is, where are you? And you do fortunately make it back, but it made me realize there's something more than what we know here. And in these spaces, you can be vulnerable. Just as you have endurance, you get tired during the day, and you rest, you spiritually could be fatigued. And if you're spiritually fatigued, you could be vulnerable to whatever's out there that could do something good or bad. So that was something that I learned in regards to patience. You can't jump into something, you got to build endurance like a marathon runner. You can't just go out and run 26 miles. You got to take a few miles at a time and build your endurance up. So that's how I got in the quest of learning and information, is do this in bits and pieces to build up your endurance so that you'll be able to, process this thing better and live it. You know what I'm saying? But that's one of the things that put things.
Peter Tosh used to talk about that,
Yeah.
He used to get like Duppies. He would sleep and Duppies would try to attack him, and he found out that the only thing they would respond to is when he would just like cuss them out and say, "Move your bumble clot."
Well, that's what you learn, bro. Yeah. There's a book, Albert Taylor, he wrote a book called Soul Traveler. And he talks about how you can control that aspect of your dreams. Because I don't see, people think dreams are make-believe, but it's actually a realm. Because as I said, lift your eyes, you're somewhere. So where are you? That's a realm, that's a consciousness. So
well, the Aborigines, the Aborigines of Australia believe that dream state is actually reality. And
yeah, this is the vacation.
It's like not even
reality,
Agreed. It has consequences to have that worldview. It has consequences because what happens is it enables you to ignore your material surroundings when you're awake. Exactly. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So like being attacked, being dominated, your land taken away from you. That's a problem, if you're thinking that like dream state is the reality, because it's like, oh, this ain't real.
Right.
People come in taking away my land and our livelihood and all that. Like, why is that important if dream state is the reality? You know what I mean?
You still feel, you still react, you still are in deep. And it's I
would love to reason with an Aborigine about that,
Yeah.
Like, actually, like, I'm gonna try to find an Aborigine that I can talk to who's into that, because I just want to know about it and ask questions. Like, I want to interrogate that.
Well, that's
type of worldview,
That's what interests me about like even doing something like ayahuasca, because what I realized, what I realized is that this thing that I was experiencing, even though I thought it maybe wasn't a demon, it wasn't until I took my first trip to Kemet that I had got a reading and was told by a dream specialist that told me that it was probably your what do they call it? It's an avatar of your I forgot the name of it, but it's a version of your higher self.
Right.
So I was actually probably being encountered by my elders or myself in another form, and probably had some information to bestow to me. That's why I was so afraid to write this book for so long, because I didn't want to be committed. People put me in a padded room. You talking about people coming to in your dreams and whatnot. Right. But I realized that there is something more, and perhaps having a communication in that realm, you might be bestowed some very vital information, or some sort of thing that can really change the way your perception and concepts of what life really is, and what living. So these are the things that I'm really, looking to manifest. Even when I talk about tangibles, is, being able to really hone in on these things and welcome it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I don't see this thing as a demon anymore. I
Oh,
see it as potentially a messenger, and I'm looking to use ayahuasca as a way, because I do feel like whether you're gonna encounter, I'm going to encounter this thing voluntarily while I'm alive, or when I transition, this thing will be there with whatever it wants to do or say. I'd rather do it on my own watch and see it, and
yeah.
perhaps ayahuasca can get me there.
Yeah, let's talk about ayahuasca, right?
Yeah,
Have you ever done ayahuasca yet?
I've been doing the studies. I haven't yet, but that was I was going to do it right before COVID, and then
Yeah.
that happened.
Where
So
were you gonna go to do ayahuasca?
I was gonna go to it was in it was abroad. Was it
You were in Costa Rica?
no, it wasn't Costa Rica. It was shit. Not Peru. It was something in that area.
Okay, like
But I
all
was
like
gonna go there.
Ecuador area, them type of place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in that area.
And
Because
for the
I was
listeners, when we talk about ayahuasca, so let's just break that down because people on different levels of
yeah,
understanding and
yeah,
information, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, you can break down what ayahuasca. It's very interesting, but the active chemical is DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine, right? Which is a chemical that your brain makes. But it also, your brain, they say that your brain gets flooded with DMT, dimethyltryptamine, in two instances: when you're in deep REM, rapid eye movement sleep, which is kind of what you're talking about too, the sleep states. And then also right before you die, your brain gets flooded with dimethyltryptamine. And so one of the ways, a lot of plants have dimethyltryptamine, you just need to know how to extract it. But the people of South America figured out a way to do it with two plants, right? So there's one plant that has the dimethyltryptamine in it. That is the plant that they're calling, but ayahuasca is actually two plants. So there's one plant that has the active medicinal ingredient, but the problem is that you have to make, like, you boil it, right? And you have this like liquid boiled plant matter, and then you drink it. But the problem is that the stomach doesn't have the enzymes, has enzymes that actually block the uptake of dimethyltryptamine into the bloodstream. So you have to have another plant. So they have another plant that actually blocks the blockage,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So they found a plant out of the millions of plants in the
Wow.
Amazon forest. They found the plant that blocks the blocking of dimethyltryptamine through the stomach.
Whoa.
And
Whoa.
so you take both of them together, and then you get DMT into your system, and it lasts for several hours. Whereas the other alternative is to get DMT through a process of extraction of DMT through the plant, and then it gets powderized. It turns into a powder where then you smoke it, and then it goes through the lungs and gets to your bloodstream that way, where you don't need another plant as to stop the blocking, because it's not going through your stomach, right? So, and then that DMT exposure lasts for about 10-15 minutes. And people say it's dramatic. There's something people can watch on YouTube. It's called DMT, the spirit molecule. So I just wanted to give people a little back. And so let's just talk about
Have you
what
done
happens. Huh?
it? Have you done it?
No, but I'm getting ready to. The
Word.
reason why I'm getting ready to is that I've studied the people who've done it. There's some channels on YouTube, people who have channels, and all they talk about is their DMT trips, and they actually film the DMT trips live. And there's like 3 different levels of exposure to DMT. And when you take ayahuasca, it lasts for hours. Whereas when you smoke it, it lasts for 15 minutes. But people say it feels like a lifetime. But people say it's life-changing because it makes you confront your own ego. They say
Yes.
it's like an ego death, because
Yeah.
most of what we do that keeps us from being the best of who we are, which is like counterintuitive, is actually our ego. The fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of this is actually what stops us from being our most optimum person, because we actually deep down inside don't think much of ourselves. Even if we do outwardly say it, deep down inside, the human being is fraught with fears and insecurities. that if you don't work to conquer actively, it's just a part of the human psyche. And it stops people from exploring. It stops some Black folks from going to Africa, right? Because of the fear that's been, it stops people from saying, I don't believe in a religion, because they're scared to drift away from the religion they've been indoctrinated with, because their ego, their fear, that ego being shattered is something that we strive hard to protect. That's why a lot of people, when you tell them, hey, you show them things about a particular religion of it not maybe being true or what have you, what the people always say to you is, okay, if I'm not to believe in Islam, or if I'm not to believe in Christianity, what am I supposed to believe in? Right? Because they always want to believe in something, right? The question is, what do I replace it with? You know, they're not even thinking of what about not replacing it with anything and just being completely free from it? But because of the ego, to identify yourself, I'm Christian, I'm Muslim, I'm this. Anytime you say I'm that, you're attaching your personality and your ego to it. So then anything that tries to go against that, you see it as a personal attack. That's why, you know, even some Christians, there's people who are watching this, who watched it. Some turned it off when you said you threw away your Bible. Or when you say you threw away your Bible, some people, they felt it in their heart, like, oh my God, he's gonna get struck by lightning or something. Like they heard something crazy just now, because they've attached Christianity to their ego and their personality. And so it's one and the same. So any of you even saying that you threw away your Bible, they're seeing it as a personal attack on them. And I know it. There's the people watching it right now, who they're watching this right now, and they feel really, really, really bad watching this because of what you said, because they're so into Christianity that they see it as an attack on them when you weren't even doing that. It's just, it didn't resonate with you, so you got rid of it, right? So, I mean, back to the DMT thing, man. And maybe we can even do, we can set up a trip. We could do some DMT and ayahuasca together, man.
That would be dope.
Yeah, that would be. That would be. You know, because I know people who, I'm aware of people who've done dimethyltryptamine and ayahuasca, because, you know, they say you do it with shaman and have a guide.
Yeah.
Because it's life-changing for people. It's very traumatic, where you face your trauma and you come out on the other side, where a lot of people end up changing their names because they feel like that person that existed before, that's a weak person who died. I'm a new person now, right? So then they'll just change their name. And a lot of people who do ayahuasca, they end up being entrepreneurs, very wealthy, because they start cutting out all the noise in their life that has been holding them back. And they're very clear on what their purpose is, what they want to do, and how to get there through discipline. So I think that it would be very informative for me. I think it'll probably give me a lot more insight into, you know, myself, things I need to do. So I'm always looking for things that'll give me different perspectives and to have me challenge what I already believe or what I already assume to be true. I'm always looking for those challenges. And so that's why I'm very interested in doing ayahuasca, you know. And they say, you know, the first level of entheogenic herbs, you know, which is, or entheogenic for the listeners, is just herbs or plants that actually are inspirational, right? So they call it entheogenic, inspirational plants that cause inspiration. So they say the first level is cannabis. Then the level above that would be psilocybin. And then the graduate level is, well, probably above psilocybin would be the toad, right? So there's the toad, there's a special toad that has chemicals in the back of it. And when you get the chemicals in the back of it, you go on this trip. And so that level is, I think that's what they call 5-MeO dimethyltryptamine. Some people have some very like nightmarish trips, and then some people have very good trips with that. And then the higher level is just dimethyltryptamine, which is ayahuasca, essentially. You know, it's just the mode of ingestion. DMT, you can smoke it as a powder, or you can drink it as ayahuasca, you know what I'm saying? And so that ayahuasca you purge. There's a whole
Yeah.
purge that happens. So that's
Yeah.
metaphorical. You're getting rid of all the waste,
Yeah.
right? Like literally people throw up or people have diarrhea for a couple of hours to cleanse themselves when they take the ayahuasca, and then they start having these visions. And
Crazy.
yeah, so I mean, so what led you to the ayahuasca? What got you involved in like researching ayahuasca and DMT and all that?
Well, I had came across that documentary, the DMT molecule, and seeing the trips that people went through, it took me back to what I
Mm,
experienced. And I was
right.
like, okay, I'm having this without ayahuasca. I'm having this trip to this other side, or other parallel place that. And I was like, imagine, and that was the thing I was fixated on, wanting to revisit it, because I still go through these things. I still go through these gradual, when I'm spiritually fatigued and I feel it's coming, I feel that pull. And that was the other thing, is it's a pull. I feel
Mm,
like I'm being elongated through from one dimension to another, be it through a wormhole or whatever. I feel that. And another thing is, if you, I've had my share of fainting spells. I've fainted several times before, so I know the feeling of what you go through when you're leaving a certain level of consciousness or awareness, and how other awarenesses are heightened.
mhm,
When you pass out, I know for me, when I passed out before, I used to have fainting spells as a kid. I remember that when I would pass out, I would suddenly hear everything and nothing at the same time. Like I could zero in on one conversation, but then also hear everything at the same time. And I saw this as a spiritual reboot, because your body's shutting down, losing awareness on this realm, but then it reboots again, and then certain, just like when you turn on a computer, things that they come on quicker these days. But back in the day, when the computer came on, that light was buzzing for a minute red, then it turned green, and then it was you're online. So that's the same connection that I felt happens when you go through these phases. But for me, it's really, ayahuasca to me seemed to be the place where I could go, because again, when I do have these feelings, there is still that fear, that blockage. I'm blocking myself because I'm afraid. What if I'm not prepared? What if this thing does? Because as he said, it came and killed his girl. So I'm thinking, is it coming to kill me or whatever? So whenever I feel that, I turn on music and it goes away. So I feel,
quick question. So
yeah,
when he
yeah.
says it came and killed this girl, like, did she actually die or this was a vision he had?
No, when they woke up, she was dead laying next to him. She died in her sleep.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a
So
crazy story.
technically I could be like, I don't believe that. But then again,
Right.
because he said whatever happened to me and he wasn't there, I was like,
Well, he did it
okay,
twice. He did it
yeah,
twice.
twice.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm like, there must be something about him, and it's something he knows about me, and he's bestowing this to me. So I didn't really drill him on proof.
Right. Right.
I was more so like, okay, you got my attention.
Right.
But we had a falling out, and I wasn't able to get closure on his
Right.
awareness. But nonetheless, for me, it's always been about the inquiry of wanting to know more. I've always, as a child, had this. I always looked in the sky and knew that there was something more, and I've always felt I had this connection somewhere else. And I really feel like my purpose, you know, it's not so much that I want to remember what I was before, but I do believe that we're more than we've always been, and I want to understand that the conceptual concept of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, what does that really look like for if we're always been here? And as Neil deGrasse Tyson may say, is that we're star stuff. Okay, yeah, but what does that really mean? At what point does our consciousness and our soul become part of this entity, this physical piece, and where does it go afterwards? Like, these are the questions I've always had as a little youth. I had these
Mm,
same kind of inquiries,
right.
and because I
Philosophical
had someone to
question.
share it with, I was afraid to speak to someone about it. So I went through my entire young adulthood, young teenage years, and not speaking about it, keeping it to myself. But then when I had this encounter, it was like, okay, it's time to exploit this. And that's where my writing became. That's why I feel like, you know what? Maybe I can't find someone to speak to, but if I write about this, then perhaps I'll find someone that does. And when I wrote Analytical, after sitting on this idea for about 7, 8 years, I realized that my story was not authentic. I realized that other people have had similar experiences, which opened me to ayahuasca as a way to
Right.
remedy that, to experience that. So that's,
You mean
yeah,
that you mean that you experienced not that it wasn't authentic, it just wasn't unique.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because I thought, no one's going to understand no one's going to believe me.
Right.
But I've had people tell me that, I've had this experience, I've had that experience. I'm like, word. So yeah, it's about getting out of your own way if you're trying to get to a certain space.
Right.
And having that conversation, it's kept me on this level of being open, and receptive.
Yeah.
And, you know, yeah, that's what it is. It's just, progressively trying to find ways. So I do believe that having this ayahuasca experience could answer, or at least put me in a further direction of where I'm going to get these answers.
Okay. Have you ever tried psilocybin mushrooms?
I have it.
Okay.
No.
And how about cannabis? Have you used cannabis or been a decent user of cannabis?
Uh, I didn't do it for the right reasons. When
Okay.
I didn't do it for that reason in mind. It was just a blunt that was being passed.
Oh, the blunt that was being passed. Okay.
Yeah. So I never did it with those aspirations in mind.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I say to people, I wonder about people who go because it's like you're starting right at the PhD level when you go straight to ayahuasca, And
Yeah.
so I wonder if for people it'd be better for them to ease on in, you know what I mean? Start with cannabis and maybe graduate to psilocybin and then go to the ayahuasca, you know what I'm saying? But I think there's people I know of who've just gone straight to the ayahuasca.
Mhm.
It just depends on what they can handle at the
Yeah.
time. But the people who come out of the ayahuasca experience and the DMT experience, they all uniformly say the same thing. That's why I'm so fascinated by it, because it seems to be three levels. The first level is when you start seeing the shapes,
Mhm.
and you start seeing these beautiful
Nations, yeah.
geometric patterns and what have you, and then you start seeing them even more intensely. And then there's this breakthrough that happens. The third level breakthrough is like, so this is when you're seeing like these like really colorful chrysanthemum shapes, but then uniformly they say you feel like you blasted off somewhere, and when you reach the place, like you feel like it sounds like paper crumbling, or like paper being um,
Crumbled up.
handled, like you start hearing these types of noises, um, and then you get to this place, and then you're welcomed actually with what they call entities. There's a
Mhm.
guy named Terrence McKenna who calls himself a psychonaut, basically a psychological astronaut,
Mm.
and he does lectures about DMT and psychedelics. And they're all over YouTube. You should check them out.
Terrence McKinney.
Terrence McKenna.
McKenna.
Yeah, he talks about it a lot. And I think you get a lot out of listening to his lectures. You just play the lectures and just when you're sitting at home, listen, he talks really interesting, really slow.
Uh-huh.
But he talks about it in depth. And uniformly, people come out and they say that they're welcomed when they get to this place, when they have the breakthrough, and they're like greeted, like we've been waiting for you,
Mm.
like thank you for coming, like we've been waiting for you. And then there's these entities that, like they say, they call them machine elves, and like they're encapsulated by light. They don't really have a form, and then they talk to you without moving their mouths,
Mm.
and they basically show you, they communicate with you by showing you things. So like you can ask them whatever you want to ask them, and they show you the answers, and they
Mm.
show you like the unity between things, and how things are connected, and the path that you should move forward, and also show you your ego, where you have like an ego disintegration. And people
Mm.
say that that's really the best thing that happens when they come off of the ayahuasca high or the DMT high is that all of a sudden now they're humbled and they see life a little bit different, but then they have no, one of the best things I think that comes out of the ayahuasca experience is that they no longer have a fear of death.
Yeah,
And I
that
think
part.
that's very empowering as
That
a human
part.
being, not to have a fear of death, because you know that what's waiting for you is actually this beautiful thing, like more than just like what you're reading, saying, oh, heaven is, because I've had talks with pastors, you know,
Mhm.
like sometimes I troll, you know, I'm a troll sometimes,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
But like I've talked to pastors and I asked them, like, you know, heaven, like, you know what I'm saying? Like heaven's the land of milk and honey. And I'm like, well, what if I don't like milk and I don't like honey? You know what I'm saying? What if I don't like milk, man? I'm lactose intolerant. What if I
Right.
don't like honey? You know what I'm saying? Like, what if I just don't like the taste of honey? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, honey's bee vomit. You know what I mean? What if
Right.
I don't want bee vomit?
Right.
Because they're assuming that like everyone likes the same thing, right? But to me, it's always been like, I don't know, you can give me your take on this, but like heaven is very specific. Heaven should be tailor-made for every person. Because my
Exactly.
idea of heaven would not be another person's idea of heaven. It's like, you know, you ever went on a vacation with a woman? Like her idea of vacation is not my idea of vacation.
Facts.
You get what I'm
Facts.
saying? Like
Yep.
my idea of vacation is, you know, we go to a different place, but I'm always trying to do business. I'm
Hmm.
always trying to find out how I can do business and wherever I go. Like, and then the woman might be like, don't you ever turn it off? I'm like, no, this is fun to me. Like going shopping and going to look at restaurants is not fun to me. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? That's your idea of a vacation and traveling and all that. My idea is where can we do business? You know what I'm saying? So for
Right.
me, it's like, so I asked pastors, you know, I've said, so like this heaven that you're talking about, are there mangoes there?
Mm.
At first
Specific.
they'll laugh like that, like they'll laugh, right?
Right.
And they're like, food? I'm like, yeah. Like, are there mangoes there? Because to me, it's not heaven if it's not mangoes there,
Facts.
right? But then I said, but you can't tell me like I can't ask about food because you just told me there's milk and honey there.
Right.
If there's milk and honey, I want to know if there's mangoes because that's what
Yeah.
I'm interested in. You
Yeah.
get what I'm saying?
Facts.
Like
Yeah.
my idea of heaven, is there reggae music there? I need
Right.
reggae music. If you're talking
Right.
to me about heaven and this is the place where I should want to go, you got to entice me with what I like.
Mhm.
Because milk and honey ain't cutting it.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you understand?
No, that's real. That's real. Nah, that's real.
Yeah, you know,
And they
but it has to
can
be
they
tailor made.
yeah.
But they're saying that, you know, when you do this DMT high, it's tailor made to the questions that you have. Like
Yeah.
they actually tailor make answers for you.
Yeah.
I found that to be very compelling and very interesting. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man, it can't be one size fits all heaven.
Not at all.
Afterlife can't be one size fits all because what you like is not what I like.
Right.
You know what
I've
I'm
always
saying?
had that feeling, man. I've always had that feeling of, I'm not I'm not a conformist. I can't do what everybody else is doing. I'm gonna want to have my own flavor to this thing. And yeah, that's exactly I question everything. I've always been that way. I've always been like, well, why? Why does it have to be this way? And
Right,
and why can't it be this way? And why is it wrong to ask? And that's
right,
when the elders say we stop asking questions. We get all that. We get
right.
they stop asking questions. The problem is that a lot of us get to the point where we stop asking those questions and we conform.
Yeah.
To me, I'm like,
No, I
I can't
can't do
shut
it
that
either.
off. I
Yeah, I
can't shut
can't do it either. I always
facts.
got questions, man.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I have a BS detector that's very strong.
Ooh. Well, in the root word of questions is quest. That's the
Yeah,
journey. And so for
exactly.
me, it's always about trying to get to a destination, and my destination is always moving. So
Yeah,
I'm not going to be happy with, okay, I made it to Christianity. This is good enough for me. Like, nah, it's evolving, evolution. You should always be
yeah,
trying
yeah.
to get better, you know?
Yeah, and if it's the and I always learn if it's the truth, it won't be offended by the question.
Facts. Yeah,
You know, the
that's
truth is very resilient to questions.
yeah.
The
Yeah,
truth welcomes questions. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
man. I mean, we could talk about ayahuasca and DMT for a while. But what I want to do is I want to pivot and start moving to because I want to know this. I've never asked you this in all of our personal conversations. Talk about the ghetto times, man. How did that start? Yeah.
Word. So uh
Just tell people what the Ghetto Times is so that
yeah.
people would know what it is and then give us, give us the history on how that came to be.
The Ghetto Times, man, April 10th, 1993. First publication. It evolved because from after again, KRS-One again laid that foundation for me. And I had just went through extensive reading and lectures and for about 2 years of just trying to really just consume this newfound awareness from all different kinds of spaces. And I started again, as I said, when you learn something, the first people you want to go to is your family, your loved ones. You want to share what you know. And they're usually the first one to be like, yo, you done lost your mind, right? So then you have that question of, okay, well, have I lost my mind, or do I still want to try it forward? And I decided to continue learning. And then I said, well, okay, if my family won't listen, then maybe somebody else will. So I actually started standing on corners and doing talks on the corner. So anybody that would walk by. Almost like,
What corner is this?
this is I would be in on Nostrand and Fulton. I would
Oh
be
man, that's my stomping grounds,
for
man.
real, right? I
Yeah,
would
the
go,
Ali's Roti, man. The
yes, sir.
roti shop's right there.
Yes,
You know the
sir. Yeah,
roti shop right there, right?
absolute, absolute. Yeah, when they closed down during COVID, it was a problem. But they
Yeah,
opened
it's a
up.
big problem. People couldn't get their roti and their doubles and
Exactly.
all of that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I'd be on like Flatbush in Fulton downtown,
yeah.
and just you would get people that would walk by. And this is when Brooklyn was really like, you had street vendors. You know what I mean? People were out. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? They weren't
yeah,
just going to
yeah.
commercial venues. They were out and speaking and communicating with each other. But anyway, so I realized that people don't have time to sit there and stand and listen to you talk. So I was like, okay, well then
So
maybe
you saying you straight up posted on the block and just started
yeah.
talking? You had like a loudspeaker or something?
No, not. I didn't have any money to do that, so I was just like talking, and then I would get a couple of people that would stand. I had a very loud voice, so I would be speaking pretty
Yeah,
loud so they can hear me. Yes, sir.
that's what you used to
And that,
do?
yes, sir.
Man, I had
And
no
that was
idea. So
big.
you just post up on the block and just start talking.
Yep. Just start talking, man. And I would have my flyers because I would go to Kinko's and I would, write out little bullets
Mm,
and obviously these are bullets for your gun, for your mental gun. And I would have these and I would cut them in half and I would pass these out and then I would just be talking. And so they would walk away with something, like just a
mm.
thought. But at the
So,
time it was,
what's really interesting, not to interrupt,
uh,
seems like that Ansaru exposure gave
yeah,
you a little training and some insight as to how you were going to do what you needed to do for what you
absolutely.
believed in.
Absolute. Yeah, I was
Got it.
really like, you know what? And I was never afraid to get in front of people. As a kid, I used to break dance, I used to do theater, and I wasn't afraid to get in front of people and perform. So, Toastmasters, I would be, doing those debates and stuff like that. So I had a voice and I felt very confident about it. Um, but then I realized again that people don't have time to sit there and listen to you. So I said, well, let me go give a shot at writing. And my first one, and the name just came because that's the thing, like, it's divine. Like, I'm gonna call this Ghetto Times, not even it was just Ghetto Times.
Mm.
And like, why Ghetto Times? Because, well, okay, you got New York Times, you got LA Times. What about us in the ghetto? We are not getting this information. And the books I was reading were not palatable for brothers in the street. Dr. Clark, Chancellor Williams, like, these are books that, Dr. Ben, we're not touching those books because of the thickness. There's no pictures. And so I said, well, let me take this information and then put
And
some
distill it.
ebonics to it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
distill it to a place where it's understandable.
absolute. And I love the fact that this was before even marketing would use Z's in their spellings. I was, I won't say I was the first, but I was one of the first folks that would write with those Z's and these ebonic spellings in their writing, because I thought this is going to appeal to this is the hip hop nation I'm trying to get to, that I'm
So
a
instead
part
of
of.
times Times, you would write Timez.
No, TYMZ.
Tymez
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Tymz.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
TYMZ, and everything. And
Mhm.
people will be like, I found later on that probably wasn't the best strategic thing to do because I wasn't taken seriously. This brother
Right.
can't spell. You need spell check. I would hear that all the time.
Right. Right.
Like, don't worry about that. Just read the information. Do you feel the information? You know what I mean?
Right.
But April 10th was the first piece. And I had a partner that worked at Kinko, so he gave me a solid, and he would print out mass copies for me with colored paper. No, my bad. I was working at a satellite company for NASA educational department, where I was creating curriculums for high school students. So I had access to printers. So I would take the colored paper, and my first issue was in green, the next one was in yellow, and it was just 5 pages of just information. And I would just pass them out. And then the next month came, and I was like, I got something more I want to say. So I did another one, and then this became monthly. Okay, I want to say this, I want to say that. And then about the 10th issue I had done, someone submitted something to me. And that's when I was like, you know what, I want to turn this into a publication. And it was just like, it was, meant to be. It was just like, I backed into it. It wasn't a plan. I never saw it as a business.
Right.
It just turned into that. And
So
because
then
I
you
have
became you'd be a well-circulated publisher
bro,
because
I
Ghetto
love,
Times was all over the place.
yeah, man, because I'm a designer. I'm in-house, so I could design it, write it, publish it. I mailed it. Like, I was a one-house shop, and I enjoyed doing it all. And at the same time, I was reading every day, like hours upon hours of reading information, so that I could put more information in the magazine. So it was kind of like this one of them things where I felt like, I never would have thought I would do it. But then I realized in 5th grade, I made a comic book out of paper in my class. And I found that later on, like, whoa, so this was a little seed that was put in me. I was going to always be in some sort of publishing. I was touched with that earlier on.
And maybe that's why Garvey resonated with you, because he was a publisher as well.
Absolutely. When I heard about the Negro World, like, okay, I was literally, and this was after I started DGT, Ghetto Times, is that I was like, okay, I'm doing something that I have an example of someone that's done it before me. So that actually made me feel like, okay. And if you might remember too, there was Frontline magazine, Marcus Klein, brother out of Chicago.
I know of him, but I don't know him personally.
Yeah, so he and I were
he's doing some real good work.
Yeah, we was doing that. Yeah, he has his own school. We've been homeschooling these children are, amazingly bright. But he was also coming with his magazine called Frontline. And so, we were like, comrades in putting out conscious information in a newspaper magazine format. And I don't know if there was many out there that were doing that. So we were filling a void, and I used the Source and Vibe magazine type of angle of using, entertainment, edutainment, as KRS would say, to get people intrigued and want to learn about these things. But heavy on, that's how DGT started. And this coming April, it'll be 30 years, man. It'll be the 30th year.
That's crazy. 30 years, that's crazy.
30 years, bro. It's crazy, man. But the publication isn't existent anymore because of, printing and distribution has been severely taxed. People really aren't buying newspapers these days.
Right.
So I realized that in 2007. So I went straight digital. And then I do put out articles now. The site itself, theghettotimes.com, has over 600 articles on there in the archive section. So, and a lot of those topics are still relevant today. And I still, when I see something I need to write about, I put it on DGT, or I'll put it on Crypto Woke. And
how often were you publishing the Ghetto Times? Like
monthly.
It was monthly.
Yeah,
we did. And I'm sure you had like a user base that was always looking forward to the next installment, huh?
Absolutely. We printed a total of 250 editions.
Okay. And was that mainly in the New York area in terms of when you used to print it, or you used to have it distributed to different places all around the country?
Yeah, we were in Atlanta, we were in LA, Chicago, a lot of the major urban areas where Black people live. We were in most of those spaces.
Okay. And so you basically had to learn the economics of that type of a business on the fly?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit.
So, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, let's talk about the economics of you becoming basically a publisher and you're doing this and you got to get ads and distribution and all of that. Let's just talk about, at what point did you realize, like, damn, I'm actually running a business?
Man, when I realized that I needed to stop paying for it myself, when I needed to stop coming out of pocket
Right.
and needed funding, and I needed to hire, street teams. I needed, to hire marketers. That's when I realized, yeah, this is something that I can't do just myself. And I had a point where it was expanding in that direction. But the reality is also that I had to come to realize is that unfortunately our people were not vested financially, I'll say, in our liberation in the realms of like knowledge and awareness. It reached
Right.
a point where, pulling out ads, designing ads. And again, being a graphic designer, I could do all these things in house, which saved me a lot of money. But in the bigger sense of it all, a publication, any kind of business needs to stay in the black.
Right.
And when you're getting a subscription and you got to mail these things out, you're committing to 12 months, 12 issues. You're on the pretense of hoping that you can make sure that you have something on the pipe to keep you to be able to do that.
Right.
And, businesses, we got hit hard. I mean, when they closed down Nostrand for all the vendors, I lost a lot of my distribution
Right.
in those spots. When Black bookstores started going out of business,
Right.
I also lost a lot of distribution. So, that was the things that I had to realize, that I needed to make a change. And I moved towards a digital platform, which cut a lot of overhead out and allowed me to save on money. But then again, at the same time, some people still want to have something in their hands.
Right.
So it was that challenge of figuring out, well, what was this going to be? So I basically lowered the business model of DGT and personally made it something that was more of something that I do philanthropically or as a hobby. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
It's not so much like I'm coming out every month, I'm taking subscriptions. I realize that, my energies need to be put somewhere else, because publishing is a rigorous business.
Right.
And getting readership and sponsorship and ads up, that's a lot of work. And
Did
it
you
takes
have
a lot
other
of focus.
columnists, writers, or was most of the content you?
I did at times had columnists, and but then there were also times when they weren't consistent, because that's the thing. When you back up into business, I was just a writer, but now, I didn't know about, well, how do you keep writers? How do you give them deadlines and make sure they apply to it? Yeah, you're paying them, but
Right.
what if they're not submitting? Then you have a space. So who's going to fill it? So it became to the point where, I felt like I had so much to say that if they don't submit, I got something for it.
Right.
So it got to that point. But I realized that, publishing for me, I didn't have the capability of expanding it to that LA Times, New York Times level,
Right.
mainly because of the information.
Right.
We're talking about, responsible information. Like, once you can't say you don't. And
Right.
a lot of us are still not willing to take that step into the awareness.
What
So as a
was,
business model.
okay, what was the craziest moment that you have experienced in reference to the Ghetto Times publication?
Craziest moment.
Whether it's somebody saying hey, I read this, and maybe the person's in like Alaska somewhere, or like the reach of it, conversations that you had about it. Like, what was the craziest, like most, like something that you would have never thought of would have happened because of your association and your creation of the Ghetto Times?
Man, when I started getting letters from brothers in the pen, and because they said family members would subscribe and they would send them, because they couldn't, afford to subscribe, but they would receive back issues, and then it would circulate throughout the prison. So I was like, well, I even got a couple of offers to come out to certain prisons to do a talk, and I was just like, I never envisioned, but these were the people that needed that information.
Yeah.
To have this conversation about our culture, our plight, the people that are against it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all these things. And that was rewarding to know that you're getting a letter from someone. And I mean, these are written, this ain't email, this is written letters,
Mm-hmm.
5 pages, someone pouring their heart out about how touched they were from the work that I was doing. And that's made me realize, even like with J.A. Rogers, historian, you know, because he didn't have all the certifications, he doesn't get the same amount of respect as a lot of our giants. But then again, you know, people are reading him now. So I
Right.
started to realize that, you know, the work I'm doing and have been doing, I hope that it does outlive me. And I hope that that's why I decided to evolve into the digital space, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because now if it's digital, you
Right.
know, it can be sent across the galaxy, so to
Right.
speak. So
Yeah.
that's what made me realize that I realized the shoulders I was standing on, and then I wanted to make myself more as 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 solid a foundation for someone else in journalism to want to write about our culture, and have me as a reference, or and as someone that they can learn from, or the, you know, the things that I've gone through,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can learn from that. But yeah, the biggest thing for me is, yeah, when I get letters from people that, and even now I'll get emails from people from all of the continents. I've gotten emails from people in languages I'd have to translate to Google
Mm.
Translate. Like,
Right.
they're reading this in English. I didn't, you know, I had
Wow.
aspirations of printing in French. I was going to do that because that's what Negro World did. I was going to do
Yeah.
Spanish and French.
Yeah.
Uh, so I had those aspirations, but to receive letters from people that wrote in their native language, and I had to actually go and I'm gonna translate this because I want to hear what they're saying. Was humbling.
Mm-hmm.
Was humbling because it was like,
Yeah.
wow, like they took the time, because I'm sure they had somebody translate it for them. So it just made me realize that, you know, doing the work is the most gratifying
Yeah.
piece.
So along those lines too, if you can just kind of think back, there's always there's a there's a seminal moment whenever you're involved in things of consequence. There's a seminal moment. If you can just kind of think back, what is the singular moment that made you the proudest and happiest to say, I'm so glad I did this when it comes to like the ghetto times, like one moment that you could say to yourself, yeah, during that moment, that's when I really felt like this was all worth it.
When I did my 100th issue,
Mm.
I
What
did my
happened?
100th issue, was it coincided with my 10th anniversary. And I
The
had
10th
did
anniversary of the Ghetto Times?
uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a showcase. I did a showcase of, because I started another company called ConsciousHipHop.com. So we were focusing, because of conscious hip hop was dying. So we were trying to showcase, you know, conscious MCs around the country. And so I did a showcase in DGT. It coincided with DGT's 10th anniversary, 100th issue. And that was when the thing that got to me was that I was thinking about it like, yo, I've been doing this at a time for 10 years. And um, consistency has always been something with me, always. Like, I've been growing my locks for 27 years. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I've been walking this path of consciousness for 30 years. Like, some people do this stuff and they fall off. And I
Right.
know a lot of them. And
Right.
I don't judge,
Right.
but I'm so humbled to know that at an early age, at age 20, I knew I wanted to be a conscious African
Right.
and not deviated from that. And then not only just be a person of saying I'm consciousness, but I've created things, vehicles to help others be exposed to that if they choose to as well. So that to me was the one defining moment when DG reached 10 years, 100 issues, and people were like, well, I've been reading it. People had copies. They came to the event with laminated copies of the first issue, green paper, you know, Xerox paper. Like, that to me made me like, wow, like people really felt this was worth keeping. You know what I'm saying? And who knows? I said, keep it. You might want to eBay it one day. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But it
Right.
just, yeah, it makes me understand that the work you do. If it's one thing I remember, there's this track that Robert Glasper did on one of his albums, and he had a preacher in the background playing over this track, and the preacher was talking about this person that transitioned, and they were talking about Alpha Omega, the day they were born, the day they died. But they said, let's focus on the dash. The dash. What are you doing? What is that dash? And she said, this person's dash is full. They lived a full life. They did all these things. And I've been fixated on it ever since. I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the 20 summers left.
Right.
Like my dash, the work that I'm doing while I'm here, it isn't to be martyred, but it's to say that I made use of my time here to, as I've been reading works and being inspired by now ancestors, I hope to one day be inspirational for someone else to pick up and read a BGT article or, you know, one of my books that have been written 20, 30, 50 years ago, and it's relevant. Like, to me, that's one of the core reasons why I do what I do. I want it for the present, but more so for the future.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I can imagine the 10th anniversary and 10 years of grinding and, you know, and seeing,
and loving it.
And seeing what it's done, you know?
Yeah,
how it's helped people, those type of moments, you know?
Now I got to think about something to do for the 30th. Like the 30th is in April. I got to think about what am I going to do? You know,
right.
like, am I going to come out with a printed edition? I mean, possibly. I don't know, but it's 30 years. So
yeah,
how many people can say they've been doing something consistently for 30 years?
Yeah.
I got to take that into account.
Yeah, man. Real talk.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that. And definitely, you know, I was there. So I mean, it's not like an abstraction, like walking around New York, I was always seeing the ghetto time. Like always. I was always seeing it. You know what I mean? And I was very familiar with your work. And then when I would hear you on Keely's show on Live Radio, you know, I'd get it, you know, access to, you know, what you were thinking. And what was really interesting is that all of a sudden then I heard you talking about cryptocurrency, right? I'm like, oh, the brother's into crypto now. And I just thought, wow, you know, and I'm hearing you talking like, man, I got a lot in common with this brother, you know? Let's talk about your entrance into the cryptocurrency space.
Man,
how did that happen? What caused it to happen?
Yeah, 2020, what, 15-ish. One of my then good friends came to me and said, yo, you got $100? I was like, yeah. He said, buy some Bitcoin and Ethereum. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. But because of the strength of what we had, knowing him, he was always cutting edge and learning about new things.
What year was this?
This is 2015. So I invested blindly because I'm like, it's $100, you know, just do it. And then I was that type of person that, you know, once I invested in it, I was like, okay, well, let me, because after I went through all the steps of trying to buy it, I was like, okay, I need to understand what this thing is. You know what I'm saying? So that is what really got me when I started learning about the rebelliousness of the current fiat system. I was like, oh, I was like, yo, okay, let me figure this thing out. Let me learn about it. Let me, you know, find whoever's speaking about it, figure this thing out. And I knew it was above my pay grade because, you know, I'm working at the National Basketball Association as a brand identity marketing specialist. I don't know anything about finances or money investments. I don't know nothing about that shit.
So at that time, you got involved. Let's just backpedal a little bit.
Yeah.
I know I've heard you talk about the NBA and you working for the NBA.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you make that transition out of the NBA and start getting into financial independence. Let's talk about before the NBA. How did you get a job at the NBA? What made you get a job at the NBA? What type of training did you have? What were you doing before you started working in the NBA? Just get into that a little bit.
Okay. So I have been my trade is front end, back end design. So I was doing web development, marketing, and brand identity. So that was my space.
Is that what you went to school for?
No, history. I got a degree in history. So I was teaching history for 6 months in school. And then interesting thing is when I was in the fraternity, my frat brother had took one of my drawings because I illustrated all the flyers for our parties.
Which fraternity is this one?
Alpha Phi Alpha.
Alpha, okay.
Yeah. So before And yeah, I got to plug that piece too. I wrote about all that in this book, Who is the Boule?
Okay.
We got a lot to talk about. But
Yeah, I
anyway,
had some cool brothers I went to school with who were alphas as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was an experience, that was an experience. Just like, with religion, I got in and saw the good and I saw the bad and realized I need to do something different.
Right.
But when he took one of my drawings and scanned it, I said, I want to do that. So then I started getting into, design. And I was out here in New York, you can be with any kind of temp agency and they'll put you in all these corporate spaces. I worked for Ketchum Advertisement, Dick's Sporting Goods. I was in a lot of spaces getting exposed and be able to refine my talents.
Mm.
And how I got to the NBA was, again, I had someone that from an agency that called me up and said, we got a project for you. And I was like, all right. Then they told me where to go for the interview. I showed up business casual. Well, I had to meet with them first. I showed up in business casual attire. And the sister, she said, no, go back home. She told me to go back to Brooklyn and put on a tie to go for this interview. And I was like, I got on the train. I was like, fuck that. I'm not going back because I'm not wasting my time. I'm like, fuck it. And then I'm on the train and I'm like, you know what? This could be an opportunity because quiet as kept, I was supposed to play in the NBA. I was supposed to be a ball player. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man, but something happened in college, high school, where they wouldn't let me play. They wanted me to run track instead. So I ended up going to D1. But I had aspirations of being a ball player, professional, at least collegiate, and hopefully get to the pros. So I said, well, you know what? This is the closest thing you can get to being at the NBA. It's working for them. So I said, you know what? I'll go put the tie on, went back, had the interview. I was there 2 days and they hired me full time. And I was doing all of the design for all of the entire league's websites, 30 teams, doing all their design, promotion, manuals, roster guides, all that stuff. And I was loving, just being in that experience. But did you want me to speak about what happened after, how that transition out of that? That's what you want me to get into?
Yeah, well, I'm interested to how you got, hooked up with the NBA and what you were doing for them and all of that, and what that was like, what that experience was like. So you've explained some of it, especially how you got into there.
Yeah.
Because I'm always trying to visualize people's lives, So you're working at the NBA, you're basically dealing with all of the graphics that the NBA puts out there to represent the NBA. And around what year is this?
This is 2000. I was there from 2005 to 2017.
Okay, so that's 12 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was there for 12 years.
And that's your 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And then you're doing the Ghetto Times at the same time.
Same time.
Okay.
Same time.
And that's where the worlds start to collide, right?
Yeah, man, because the thing was, I realized that, in the end, you do need to have, finances. And I was putting a lot of my funds into the business, just trying to keep these things, because, periodicals is every month, but that's a lot of work that goes into it and time with writing and all that stuff. So, I realized that I still love what I was doing. And my goal was, I'm right here with all these potential millionaires that, brothers that need to get exposed to my information.
Right.
But they had several clauses in the business structure, that they didn't really let you get close to players. You pretty much weren't allowed to. And so, I instead, tried to learn the business of a major corporation. You know what I'm saying? I was in the communications department. So it was a lot for me to be exposed to. I learned, got my writing skills a lot tighter, presentation, all that stuff. So I took in the experience of being there and seeing how business structures work, and was able to take some of those things and put it into my personal businesses and how I operate and how I look for things. So it was a great experience nonetheless, but, it was a thankless job. It was a job. And, I learned that, I'm not good at working for someone, especially when they call you salary. Salary means that you get paid for 40 hours, but you can work up to 80 hours, and that's what it is. And I realized that, as with any corporate structure, that if you want to elevate, there's a certain level of ass kissing you got to do and bootlicking, and I'm not of that bread. So I'm not bred that way.
Right.
And, that put me into another space of, okay, I need to get out of here. You know what I'm saying? As far as I can't see myself, I could have been there for 25 years if I'd have, then again, no, because of my other life that they got caught wind of. When they
Mm.
saw what I put on social media, March 13, 2017, they let me go because
Okay.
of what I post
So
on social.
walk me through that. Walk
That
me
was an
through that.
experience, bro. So I had just come back from a business trip in Costa Rica. We had been
We're
at
gonna
the
talk
time.
about Costa Rica too, by the way.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
gonna talk
yeah.
about that. Yeah.
So we were doing tours in Costa Rica, and I just got back from one, and I had this gut
This was a
feeling that
business of yours that you were doing tours to
yes,
Costa
we were
Rica.
doing
Okay.
tours. Yep, yep. And we were doing like 2 to 3 tours a year, bringing Black people over to let them see the Black experience in Costa Rica, and then potentially looking to purchase land.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a way to, you know, have a plan B, or to actually just just leave America.
And this
But
is in 2013.
this was from 2012 to 2019.
Okay, this is 2019. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, at that time, in 2017, I just got back from a trip, and I had this feeling that, you know, a big change was coming, and I always pay attention to those things. Uh, but so it was like I came back on a Monday, the next day, HR calls me down. And I had that feeling, that spidey sense went off. I'm like, okay, it's something about to go down right now, because HR has never called me. I've been here 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
This don't sound like a promotion. So when I go down there, uh, my manager's there, HR rep is there, and on the way going down the stairs, there's 3 flights. When I get to the main floor, they got security, all brothers I know, but security's at each door entrance.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, you know, something's about okay, I'm not stupid.
Right.
When I walk in and I have a seat, no sooner than I get comfortable in my seat, she blurts out, "Do you have a magazine called the Ghetto Times?" I said, "Yeah, I do." She said, "Are you involved with something called Black Land Matters?" And I said, "Yeah, you know, because that was our moniker of side business for buying land in Costa Rica and in internationally." So she's like, "Oh, well, you know, we find your writings to be racist and you know, violent and all this jazz, right?" And I'm just like, okay. So she said, "So we're terminating you immediately." And I'm like, all right. So I'm about to get up and walk out, because I was already like, any day now, I'm ready to be out anyway. I wanted to fire them, but I know about finances yet, but I was ready to go. And she said, "Wait, you can't leave yet. We need you to sign some things over." So she lifts up the envelope, and then she has all these printouts of my works. All right. So she was waiting for me to deny it. But yeah, that's my work. So my manager went to go retrieve my things, and they escorted me out. And when I saw the brothers, they was all looking at me like, damn, you know, like they knew.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess they were there to make sure I don't wild out,
Right.
you know. But that is what made me realize that, you know, no job is yours forever. You know, you will get fired when you work for someone. Eventually you get laid off, fired.
Oh yeah.
You know, so your job, they're not going to pay you for the rest of your life, and they will let you go. Where you got to give them 2 weeks notice, they will let you go immediately without a care. It could be on a Monday night or
Absolutely.
Friday night. It could be
Absolutely.
Christmas Eve.
I've always said to people, you know, people said that like being an entrepreneur is a risky thing, you know, because, you know, you don't know if your business is going to work out and all. They say it's a risky thing. And I always tell people actually being a salaried employee is riskier
Yeah, it is.
because, you know, at least being an entrepreneur, 90% of it is based on you, your abilities, your grind, your ability to sell, you know, is really relying on you. Whereas working for someone, you're relying on someone else to make sure your family is fed and housed and all of that, which is a risky proposition to put that responsibility into someone else's hands, a stranger who doesn't care about you. And at any moment, they can get rid of you.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I
So
tell
it's
people
risky. It's very risky.
I tell people that all the time. It's like, and I realize it then, is that, you know, when you are, for instance, if you have a 15 or 30-year mortgage, you know, you're guaranteeing the bank you're going to pay this house off for 15 or 30 years. But your job, there's no contract with your job,
No.
you know. So you're actually and learning that the average American loses their job every 4.2 years. And then we haven't even talked about automation. Like, I tell people, like, you think your job is secure? Okay, wait a couple more years and see what happened. And then what are you going
Yeah.
to do if you have no other trade? You know, so finances to me is not a hobby. It's a must. You know, becoming sustainable is a must. That's the conversation that we haven't been having. But yeah, it made me, being my own guinea pig, made me realize, you know, the vulnerability of it all. Being with someplace for 12 years, having never got promoted, was faithfully there, always got high marks on my reviews because of my views about something. Like when Kyrie came out, I had a piece called "I Was Kyrie Too." This is what I speak about, is that because of my views outside of the workforce, I lose my job. And I tell folks, this is the norm now. You know, this is the way that they're going to get rid of a lot of people. So, you know, we think social media is social, is really not. You know, it could get you in deep water if you're dependent on someone to feed you.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
it's a different day we're in right now. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
But we're also in a different day when it's never been easier to make money as an entrepreneur.
There you go.
Right. So it's like it's a lot of things happening at the same time. So walk me through this now. You left the NBA basically dissociated with you. You're leaving. And of course, the first thing is there's got to be some fear, right? I mean, at this time, you got a family or anything like that? You got kids? Right. So you got some youth. How many youths you have?
I have one.
Okay. So you're wondering to yourself, okay, what am I going to do? Did you save money? Did you, because you said you weren't really focused on finances too much. So, I mean, what was the, you know, alert level that you had in terms of emergency once you got fired?
It was Danger Will Robinson, bro. It was like, this is now. You know what I'm saying? It was like, what are you going to do for the next 30 days? And I, unfortunately, even though I wasn't, you know, really well versed in finances, I did have 401k money, and I had some dollars in my savings account. And that gave me the liberty to not be so rushed into getting another job or finding another one. So I decided I was going to pull money out of my 401k to give me about 2 or 3 months to think it over what I was going to do. Because I mean, yeah, I've been working for 12 years. And so now I got to think about, I'm at the time 47. What am I going to do now? Because now I'm approaching 50. And so people are going to look at me like that. You're 50 years old. So, you know, do we want to pay you on tenure, or are you too old to get paid what you're worth? So the first thing I did was I met with my broker at Fidelity to pull out finances. And this is what's so beautiful about divine timing and how the answers in the universe works with you, is in meeting with my broker. He was a fellow alum at my University of Pittsburgh, and he was in the midst of conversation of us having both went to Pitt. He's like, yo, did you know that, you know, finances, you know, like recessions are planned and da 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 da. He started telling me, dropping these nuggets, and I'm like, tell me more. You know, I'm like, word. So as he's telling me, I'm like, yo, I'm going to take all this information that he's telling me, the little nuggets he told me, I'm going to flesh it out, and I'm going to bring it to our community. Because that's the first thing I thought about. I felt victimized being fired, and I already was going to address that. But then I wanted to realize, okay, well, how do we stop this from happening? And that's when you break from the corporate plantation. Why am I going to fight to get back on it when I shouldn't be on it in the first place? So what really did it for me was when I was filling out my 401k application to pull out money, and they wanted me to list my occupation. And I had informed him that I was unemployed. So I said, bro, I don't want to put that on there that I'm unemployed. He said, I said, that don't look good. He said, you're right. Don't put that on there. Put down that you live off your savings and investments. And when he said that to me, there literally was this veil that was lifted. I saw from a whole new lens that this is what rich people do. They live off their savings and investments as an occupation. So that made me realize, okay, I don't have to work for somebody. I need to make the money work for me.
Right.
If I make the money work for me, then I don't have to work for nobody.
Right. He showed you a different way of how people are living.
Yeah,
that moving in this world. Yeah.
That one sentence shifted everything for me. Yeah. I did a 180 on the rat race psychosis. That's what hit me. Oh, this is we're part of a rat race. Okay. So now I'm going to figure this thing out based on my experience. Was the perfect precursor to it, or the perfect example to use. And then learn about finances, learn about what folks have been doing. And I started doing heavy reading again, now strictly on finance, reading Nelson Nash, reading Garrett Gunderson, reading, just books about, from Eustace Mullins and the FDA, like just the Fed, learning about all these things about finances, and then how it all coincided with my already research done on the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, seeing, oh, this is the same thing. This is,
Right.
I'm like, oh, this is beautiful, because now I'm seeing that this is all intertwined and interconnected. And that's what made me, it wasn't a thought. It was just doing. It was already
Right.
laid out for me to do. And I just followed suit, which led me
Right.
to creating Crypto Woke Financial Sustainability Movement, and we were talking about crypto, is that I was already in crypto at that point. So I felt like I had something to fall back on in case. So I felt empowered, because I was already investing in something and learning that space in blockchain technology. But then at the same time, I was like, not everybody can palate that. They can understand that, but we all are going through something financially. So I felt my lane was to break down what finances are, which I've now evolved into financial therapy, to realize that we're all going through some sort of traumatic relationship with money because we've never been taught how to use it purposely.
Right. So what was really interesting is that you were forced to reinvent yourself, right? And so like many people who became millionaires later, a lot of them have the story about being fired from their job. And it turns out that being fired from their job was actually the thing that saved their life, in the sense of their life as being a free person with financial security. Because if they were never fired, they would never have their feet to the fire, right? To become an independent entrepreneur, an investor, and all those things. You have to find other ways. But the problem with these jobs, and people have said it, that like jobs is a bribe to be a complacent slave.
Yep.
Right? It's bribery, so that you'll never become who you're supposed to become as a free, sovereign individual, right? Because of this paycheck that guarantees that you're going to be having a certain level of income, and therefore stability in terms of housing, food, all those types of things, right? Because, I don't know if you ever read the Unabomber's Manifesto. Okay. I would, I would ask you to read it. I think you'll
Okay.
find it fascinating, because he writes a lot about some of the things that we talk about, and is well thought out. And a lot of people use the Unabomber. So no, yeah, you need to read his manifesto, because he had spelled out some really good things. And one of the things he spelled out, because his concern was industrial civilization, basically, and what it does to the human spirit. And he was talking about how, like, first of all, the human being has a thing called a power principle. And every human being wants to be engaged in some form of something that makes them feel powerful. It's actually necessary for the human psyche. And so therefore, what they're saying is that if you have something that is very difficult, that you can never actually accomplish, it leads to depression. And it leads to self-doubt, and it leads to low self-esteem, because you never were able to accomplish it. However, if you have something that's very easy for you to accomplish, it leads to hedonism and laziness. So the human being needs a mix of something that's reasonably difficult for them to actually conquer. And once that conquering happens, that human being becomes reborn within their own power, and actually leads to good mental health. But the problem is that you're living in a society where most human beings before industrial society had to engage in reasonably difficult activity just to get food. That would be hunting, that would be planting, farming, tilling the soil, all of that. Something that requires a degree of effort to be able to get the desired result. So therefore, when you are hunting and you're successful, you're actually engaged in a psychological recalibration towards yourself, because you did something reasonably difficult that requires some physical exertion, and you conquered it. It actually is good for your psychological disposition, right? And so the ancient human being that was in hunter and gatherer societies, they weren't ever on psychotropics. They weren't ever having depression and schizophrenia and all of these mental imbalances, because they were engaged in activity every day that buttressed their psychological disposition. So the problem is that industrial society, all you need to be able to have your basic needs met you don't need to do anything reasonably difficult. All you need to do is have a job. And to have a job, and this is what the Unabomber says, and to have a job, all you need is to be obedient. Right? So you have a world and a society based on obeisance or obedience, right? Where basically you've got people who their basic needs are met by just being obedient. That's all a job requires, is obedience, because these jobs are not difficult. A lot of them are repetitive. You're doing the same thing for 20 years. They're not challenging or anything, right? So guess what happens? That human being is not engaged in the power principle. So then what a person has to do, and he referenced that he said, you look at people, and he took the example of Emperor Hirohito of Japan. And here's somebody who has everything provided for him. There's nothing difficult in his life at all. So what happens is that when you have everything provided for you and there's nothing difficult, not only do you have a psychological disposition towards laziness, but also you get into gluttony and hedonism, right? Because you get anything that you want with very little effort. So what happens? Gluttony and hedonism. And that's what you see in this society. People overeat, consume goods, shopping, all that, right? Because of hedonism. That's what happens when you get everything that you want with very little effort. So the way that Emperor Hirohito actually balanced his psychological disposition is that you have to be engaged in reasonably difficult hobbies, which the Unabomber referred to as surrogate activities. And this is necessary for people who get what they want without much effort. Because what happens is you get into hedonism and you're always looking for more and more and more, and it leads to actually depression as well. Because there's no real effort necessary to get what it is that you want. And that human being needs it. That's why working out is so important. Exercise, you have to push yourself. That mental challenge. That's why anybody who works out, you hate it at the beginning, but anybody who's finished works out, you always feel better.
Yep, absolutely.
And you're always happy that you did it.
Yep.
You understand what I'm saying? Like any workout, if we say, okay, we're gonna do 100 push-ups. At the beginning, we go, oh man, I really don't want to do 100 push-ups. But at the end of that 100 push-up, you're happy as hell you did it.
You posing in the mirror.
Yeah, and you're happy you did it. You feel better. You feel calmer because of this is how the human being is wired. So Emperor Hirohito actually became a world-class marine biologist. Yeah, because he just took an interest and started taking it very seriously and studying it on a very high level because he needed something to challenge his mind. This is a man who never heard no. He's the Emperor of Japan. So he became a world-class marine biologist. So what he's saying is that for you to be a healthy person and not be decadent in industrial society, you have to take in surrogate activities or do things that are reasonably challenging to maintain yourself. Because we see them all the time. How many times we see rich kids who are depressed and want to commit suicide?
Right.
Because they have no surrogate activities. They're only involved in hedonism. It's not good. That's why, like, wealthy people, their biggest problem is, how do I get my children to be psychologically healthy? This is the problem that wealthy people have. Because they're looking at their children and they're spoiled. They have everything. They're able to see things. You know, you yourself may grown up broke and you saying, oh, I want to provide for my children so that they don't have to go through what I went through. But actually what you went through is what helped shape you as a healthy person, a healthy, competitive person. And that's why many times empires don't last that are hereditary. Because your children grew up soft. They're not the same person as you. You know? So this is all like, I mean, you know, it's very profound, but you see it all in activity. You see it all happening. You know what I'm saying? And so your story is very interesting because basically, if you never got fired, you might still be working there.
Right. Or for somebody. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if they gave you a promotion, you might still be working there.
Yep.
Right. But at the same time, you don't feel fulfilled
Not at all.
because it's not challenging.
Yeah.
It was an easy job. After 12 years, there's nothing you didn't see at that
Right.
job.
Exactly.
You know, it's just basically rinse and repeat.
Mm-hmm.
But do you feel a sense of fulfillment? Are you happy? No. That's why people go home depressed and they're all popping pills, because they are automatons. They are literally getting paid to be obedient slaves. And yeah, it'll take care of your basic needs, but it's not actually good for your mental health or your sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
That's why being an entrepreneur, you know, we only eat what we kill. Or, you know, those who are vegan, we only eat what we plant.
Right.
But
Right.
it's good for mental health. You know, you don't see too many entrepreneurs who are successful being depressed,
Mm-hmm.
because it takes work to be successful
It
in
does.
that field and to create something. It's a surrogate activity, because we could have been engaged in a 9-to-5. Any successful entrepreneur would be an asset in any business, because if you can make a business work from scratch, you can be, you know, the vice president of whatever business and scale it, because we know what it is to have to go get it.
Mm-hmm.
We know what it is. We sink or swim. That's just what it is. We're in the deep waters every day.
Absolutely. Every day.
You know, but this fear of being in the deep waters is what keeps people from actually being in the deep waters. But then they never learn how to be great swimmers by you know, that dash you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
That dash from when you're born to when you die. Well, when you're born from when you die, you should have learned to be able to swim in a deep end.
That's right.
But you never would have to if you don't have to.
Right.
But that deep end is what makes you healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Being thrown in that water and getting that cold water, you know, it's not warm all the time. It's not easy all the time. It's not blue, clean waters all the time. No, we're in the deep end, and sometimes we're swimming in the sewer.
Right.
Sewage.
Murky.
Yeah, it's murky. But
yeah.
it's that type of stuff that makes and shapes personalities and positive dispositions and mental health. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, they did you a favor.
Absolutely.
You didn't see it then, but they obviously did. You wouldn't be who you are now. You wouldn't be the man who you are now.
And that was the thing that did it for me, because when I asked, as soon as I got fired, you know, yeah, I had that fear streak run through me, but I immediately start thinking, 3 months from now, you'll be in a better place. I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I've always been, you know, my own mental coach. You know, been my cheerleader, my general manager, all those things of, you're going to get through this. You know, on a positive way on the other end. So yeah, I was scared as far as, you know, but I knew that I didn't want to do what most people do, is go to the one ads looking for another plantation to hire them. You know, you're really coming back. You like, it was asinine for me. You just got kicked off. You want to come back to the plantation?
Right.
Nah, bro, you got to rethink this thing. And that's what, you know, I think that's how energy works, is that when you have a certain mindset about something, despite whatever the outcome or situation is, yeah, it's like that. What's behind door number 1, 2, or 3? And I already knew the door I was going to go through, because I had an idea what the other 2 doors would bring me.
And,
you know,
and for the listeners, this is why it's so important for you all to understand why many of us became entrepreneurs and don't work for anybody and can't have a boss. The reason is because we, at a certain point in our lives, we wanted to be who we wanted to be. You can't be who you want to be when someone else is responsible for taking care of your children and feeding you and housing you. And so entrepreneurship is literally a way that we combat slavery, right? Is that we would rather work 100 hours a week for ourselves than 20 hours a week for someone else.
Exactly.
Right? I'd rather make, if it's, let's say $50,000, I would rather make $50,000 working 100 hours a week for myself than $50,000 working 20 hours a week for somebody else. Because the price that we pay is that we have to stifle who we are. You know, you can't say what you want to say. because you're scared of losing your job or being canceled or whatever. And for some of us, it leaves a bad taste in our mouths because we know we're not being who we are supposed to be. And we have to look at ourselves in the mirror every day, and we can't stand it looking at a punk at the other side of the reflection when you want to be, when you want to keep it real with yourself. You're being a punk when you can't say what you want, do what you want, go what you want, go where you want. You have to ask another man for permission to take a vacation. Another grown adult woman, can I get a vacation? And that doesn't sit right with a lot of us. And those of us who've actually taken stances on social issues, what we also realize is that, well, we're taking these stances on these social issues, but how does that project in our own lives? Are we being as brave and as bold as we're telling everyone else to be in our own lives when we got to go say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and punch into a job? So for a lot of us, we didn't become entrepreneurs because of like greed for money. We became entrepreneurs because we really just wanted to be free and be who we wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, entrepreneurship was my underground railroad.
Right.
You know, to not have to report to any other man, to not have to have my son hear me talk about a boss.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't feel good having my son hear me talk about my supervisor. Because what I want to do is I want to teach him to be a man and to stand on his own too, and to be a serious contributor to society and have autonomy. And you can't do that as an employee. You just can't. It's too whimsical. It's a whimsical existence. Someone wakes up in the morning, they decide they don't want you anymore, and it turns your life upside down. We don't want that for ourselves. We don't want that for our children. So that's why we became entrepreneurs. So now you're confronted with, okay, you don't have a job anymore. Do you have a plan? Or do you just say to yourself, I'm not going back. I'm going to figure it out. And what are the steps that you take?
That was the thing. That's exactly what it was. I didn't have a plan. I had, well, I did have plans. I had, all these side hustles, there's DGT, there's Costa Rica trips, there's, I know that I can create something. And I was like, you know what? It's time to bring those things to the forefront. So it was the reinvention, and it just, the finance piece just happened to fall in place because that was not even on my radar at that time. But then I realized, well, just doing a little bit of, spending a little time learning about finances, I was like, I know I didn't know this. So imagine how many others of us don't know this. And me always wanting to be a vehicle of information and inspiration, it was a no-brainer. It was like, okay, so let's start teaching this. Let's start sharing this. And then automatically it's like, yeah, this is a business. This could be a business. So I'm an educator already. So now I'm going to educate folks on finances because I've always at the core said to myself, I admire the works of our giants, but they all die broke.
Right.
I've been
That's
saying
real.
that for years.
That's real.
I was
That's
like, if I don't do anything about it, I'm gonna end up just like them. So I said, well, here's finances. This is the thing that, everyone wants to say the buzzword economics, even within these circles of people. We talk about economics and the black dollar, but no one's talking about financial sustainability and how to build it. So I was like, that's my lane. And so I just, I took 2.5 months to just digest as much as I could to give me enough of a foundation to begin now. And it seemed natural for me to bring in history. It seemed natural for me to bring in the creation of the dollar and equating that to depravity and all these things that, we hear about. Now I can show you that, okay, not only let's not talk about the badness, but let's talk about the people that are doing well. And what are they doing differently that we aren't? And I learned about arbitrage, and I learned about, the banking system, and I learned about the power of credit. And I learned, all these new vehicles that seem to be, what's the word? Seem to be kryptonite to us, because the topic of wealth building or conversations about money in the least are taboo because we're just afraid to talk about how broke we are. So I just feel like this is a natural fit for me to just create this, and that turned into, crypto woke. And that's where I am now. Is I spend a great deal of time wanting to both for myself I'm 5 years out, having worked for anybody for 5 years. And each month is a victory. I'm running scared, because nothing is guaranteed, especially
Mhm.
in a space of entrepreneurship. You know, Nothing's guaranteed, especially if you're in a service-based business. You know, Inflation is hitting, so people's dollars are tighter. So they
Mhm.
might not be buying as much or as often, so you need to figure out, well, what is the next phase? And the next phase is passive income. Having that conversation about learning about passive income will relinquish you from being dependent even on customers if you have your own business.
Right.
So that's what's really like I've been fixated on is, people hear entrepreneurship and they think mom and pop shops. I'm working long hours.
Mhm.
No, again, how do I get money to work for me? That's the best business you could ever have. Living off your savings and investments. That's the best business you could ever have. So that's where my focus has been is, walking through those stages. And as I'm doing it in real time, share it with people to see that, I'm just an average Joe like you.
Mhm.
I wasn't born with this or that. I didn't pay $1,000 for the seminar, or I didn't go and get a degree in this. I'm an average person that is looking to figure it out and not complain, but we figure it out and come with a resolution.
So, you have students, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's talk about your business with Crypto Woke. What is the Woke business? Somebody signs up for your courses. What can they expect? What does it look like? Are we doing it online? Am I doing mail order stuff, or do I have to be physically there with you in terms of seminars? Is there homework? Is it like what is it? What does it mean to be a student of Crypto Woke, and what could I expect if I go through your program?
Okay. So the biggest thing that the takeaway that I look for folks is, I understand the teacher student model, but I also am open to, the student becoming their own teacher. I don't want to be the person that's dangling the carrot in front of you to where you only know what I've learned or taught you. You only can get it from me. My goal is to get you to a point where you are self-sufficient, so where you can figure these things, and you have a method of creating the sustainability in your own way. So in my courses, I teach um, the basics of like foundational wealth building, and I use it from a historical perspective, and then I tie it into personal. It's like, well, what does it look like to, we were just talking about the worker bee mentality, basically, like how your income is tied to, you know, an employer that can let you go whenever they want. So the end goal is to sever that relationship and put yourself in a position where you are being paid residually on something through the form of passive income. So when you take the class, you're going to get they're virtual. I have done some group sessions in person. It depends on, where I'm at, because I'm in Brooklyn. So I'm not, depends on if you're in Brooklyn, or when I'm relocating, we can do it there. But primarily my clients are online. We have paced courses, but also we have our bi-weekly meetings in 3 weeks. These courses you're done with the course. It's basically 7 sessions. And by the end of that 7 session, you walk away with the ability to both know your debt to income ratio. You come out with a strategy on how you can map out a plan to cover debts, as well as put away funds for savings. Not
Mhm.
savings in the savings account, meaning savings that you can invest in something to create a uh, a passive income model for you to bring in money, so that you can stop going to work and for it. So that's the primarily focus of it, and it's part of a movement. So it's called the Crypto Woke Financial Sustainability Movement, meaning that the goal is for us to all get to a point where we're at 750 plus credit scores, perhaps even closer to 800, and that we all have 5 to 6 figure lines of credit that can be used
Mhm.
to do some collaborations. and even the next level of, getting into trusts and S corps and infinite banking concepts,
Mhm.
so that we understand that this money will be good not just for us, but for our bloodlines moving
Mhm.
forward. This is what
So,
other families have been doing.
right. So just to be clear, crypto woke isn't just strictly about cryptocurrency.
Not at all.
It's really about all forms of money and how to use it and leverage it for your benefit without necessarily having to work a 9 to 5, essentially.
The etymology of the word crypto is hidden.
Right.
So we're talking about hidden money methodologies that have been used by rich families for over
Right.
250 years.
Right. I just
Recession.
wanted to make sure,
Yeah,
I want to be clear on that because I think a lot of people would think, oh, this is a cryptocurrency
exactly.
education, but you're using crypto for the true meaning of crypto, which is hidden or
Yeah,
coded. Yeah.
yes,
So, like cryptography.
exactly.
So, let's just talk about some epiphanies and revelations. Uh, Talk to me about some of the major epiphanies that you find in the credit card space, like
Oh,
how you can use credit cards uh, to advance your wealth, and then talk to me about some epiphanies that you might be able to share with people around life insurance or
okay.
epiphanies around different forms of money, cryptocurrency, or what have you. But some of these kind of cheat code type things that could be used that anyone could use if they set themselves up properly.
Got you. So glad you asked that. So when someone asks you your salary, oh, I make 50,000 a year, or I make 100,000 a year, whatever you make
Right.
a year, right? Um, People say that proudly. I make this a year,
Right.
but they never have full access to those funds until the end of the year. You're giving it to you. It's given to you partitioned incrementally. So
Right.
you're going to be given biweekly paychecks, right? So if there's an opportunity or an emergency, uh, you won't have access to that $100,000 until the end of the year, and provided you save it, right? Because you have other expenses monthly. With credit, credit is, they say cash is king, and it hasn't been for a long time. It's credit that is real truly king, because with credit, anyone, no matter what persuasion, ethnicity, gender, you can grow a coffer or a line of credit from 5 to 6, even 7 figures, uh, if you do these simple strategies. Like for instance, applying for credit. Uh, we apply for credit because we're doing it to buy something. I'm applying for credit to create that safety net. I would love to have a 7-figure line of credit that's at my disposal for emergencies or investment opportunities, even if it's 5 or 6 figures. Your job is only going to give you a few $1,000s every week or every other week. But if you have $50,000 line of credit and a $40,000 or $30,000 opportunity comes to the table, guess what? You can use that as a means to participating in that opportunity. Your job will never pay you enough
Mm-hmm.
to participate in freeing opportunities for yourself. So that's
When
the
we
one.
talk about opportunities, we're really, like, to be more specific, we're talking about opportunities for money to grow,
Exactly.
correct? So when we're
Yes.
talking about using credit, we're not talking about using credit to shop, right?
Exactly.
We're talking about using credit for opportunities to flip the money,
Exactly.
right? So I just want to be clear for people, because a lot of people don't really understand the real use of credit cards. Some people do think it's just for emergencies, which is important to have
Yeah.
emergency money funds set aside. But more importantly, you wouldn't need to do that if you were actually flipping money as a normal part of life, right? So,
Exactly.
so I just want to be clear on that. And so this is what you're essentially teaching people is, okay, this is the proper use of credit. But then you also show people how to attain it, like a roadmap for it. And so let's just talk about that a little bit, as much as you want to talk about. Someone walks in and they sign up for your class, and they learn about the whole banking industry and fiat and all of that, but they're saying, hey, I want to build generational wealth, right? Um, how are we going to do it with credit? What does it look like? What are we doing? We're using, you could say, okay, we're using the money to purchase assets, right? But like, let's just talk about real world scenario stuff that you've done with credit that has been able to help you grow the money.
Yeah, I mean, one example is I was able to use credit to get involved in cloud mining or cryptocurrency, um, purchasing, working with you and purchasing the rigs, like, that cost not $500. It was several tens of thousands of dollars, and
Right,
that we don't have that cash on hand. We don't have that
right,
in our savings account. We might have it in the 401k, but you'll get taxed up to 5 times and pulling out if you're under 59 and a half. So
right,
using credit can be a vehicle that can allow you for opportunities such like that now is flipped into something that's giving you a residual return. And that's the thing is that, thinking forward is, if you could make the opportunity, if you put into something that is creating a return for you, you're employing the money, having it work for you, inevitably, as I go back to, is that you will lose that job or you will be too old to work.
right,
So your bills are still going to be due. So again, this is not optional. This is mandatory for us to be in that mindset that you still need to be able to have something creating funds for you, even when you're no longer employable. And Social Security is not going to cut it. You know, Putting money in, 401ks is not going to cut it.
right,
So we need to diversify if you're going to keep it in there, put it in something else in addition. So it's to me, it's that's one example of putting into something that like a cryptocurrency model that can bring you a return. You can put it into land, which can appreciate with value. You can purchase, use credit and liquidate it into purchasing land
hmm,
internationally instead of buying it here in the States. Buy it
right,
somewhere abroad, and you'll pay less than and have even better land quality and be able to do more with it on that
right,
land.
right, right. But then
We did that
the skeptic who doesn't know much about credit cards would say, what about those crazy interest rates on these credit cards? So
right.
what is your response to that?
Yeah. So
I'm
here's
just
the thing.
giving you layups.
Yeah,
I'm giving you alley oops.
I'm gonna bring it in. I'm gonna bring it
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
Um, so when you think about interest, man, is that you're gonna always pay interest. The point is that I'll use the analogy of someone that is paying. I'll use arbitrage states like amortized loans. So if you actually have a home and you're paying, a certain amount of money every month for over a 15 to 30-year period, and you're hitting this 3 to 6%, right? You're thinking that's not as much as a credit card, which is anywhere between 17.99 and 27.99% per late transaction or transaction. So if you do the math with amortized loans, for an example, if you're making that minimum payment every month over 15 years, the first 5 years, 80% of your premium payments is going towards interest. So a lot
Right.
of the money that you're paying towards that house is going towards the bank's pocket.
Hmm.
And you get nothing for it. It's free money for them. That 21 or 22% that you may be paying, or even 27% on your credit card, it's much less when you look at the amount of numbers. For example, one of my clients had a $200,000 mortgage. They were paying $1,200 a month. The first year they made $1,200 a month. That's $14,400 a year annually. Only $2,300 of that 14,000 went to the house. The remaining 12,000 went to the bank, and
Right.
that happens over the duration of that type of loan. So when you're talking about interest, you're paying more for something like that opposed to the 20 some odd percentage if you're using a credit card. So again, it's about checking out. Yeah, 21 is, who wants to owe anything, right? Who wants to pay interest on anything? But if you're putting into something that's going to bring your return, I think it's a better play. I'm not saying don't buy that house, but understand that 6% may not seem a lot, but over 30 years, you actually bought a house and a half, if not two, for
Right.
free.
Right. And reason why I asked you about the interest rate too is that a lot of people don't realize that a lot of these credit cards come with these special deals, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Um, so one of the things that I use credit cards for is when I'm making business plays, it is only 0% interest credit cards that exist where you get 0% interest for a year, right?
Mhm.
So you get 0% interest credit cards on anything that you buy, 0% interest for the whole year, or 16 months or 18 months, whatever it may be. And then also, there's also balance transfers. So you can get interest, 0% interest on balance transfer. So you transfer from one card to another card, and then the card that you transfer to, you don't have any interest payments for a year. So what that's basically doing is you get in a year as an entrepreneur to pay that money back, because you're getting it at 0% interest, which is literally free money. You're getting the money for free in terms of the price of the money, right? Because essentially interest is just telling you that this is the price of the money, right? This is the cost of getting this money. But if there's no cost of getting the money, then you're getting money free that you just have to pay back within a year without incurring interest. And so I like that model, because as an entrepreneur, anything you're doing, you should try to, break even by a year. If you can break even by a year, within a year's time, you're good to go, and you can rinse and repeat and do it over and over and over. And that is probably the only benefit of living in America, right? Is that you get access to capital for cheap. In many other places, you're not able to do these types of plays. You don't get 0% interest money, but you can get that in America. So anyone who's in America, just understand that America is all about money, and that's the reason why people immigrate here, except for maybe people who are fleeing some type of political or religious persecution or whatever. But most people only immigrate to America because of the economy of America, the money. So if you're in America, you should be finding out how you can get money legally and be able to use these types of rules of the road that we are not exposed to in the educational system, because the educational system wants us to be, just like the Unabomber said, just to be obedient. That's why they don't train you to run a business. Even in business school, they don't show you how to open a business. Actually, in business, when you get an MBA, they don't show you how to open a business. They don't show you the steps of like filing the papers to open a business. They just show you how to manage a business, which is basically becoming an employee for an entrepreneur. I have many friends who have MBAs, and they call me for business advice because they have no experience in running a business, like the practical aspect of it. So what the brother is trying to tell you all, to the listeners, what Brother Mbwebe and Crypto Woke is trying to say is, holler at him so he can show you the rules of the road that the educational system's not showing you. He can show you how to leverage credit cards properly instead of getting credit cards and buying Christmas presents. Right. You know what I'm saying? That don't appreciate in value. Whenever you get this money, it should be using the money to grow the money and to flip the money. And if you have to rely on it for a rainy day, then that's just what it is, because you're in an emergency. But that is not the state of being that we're trying to be in, is a perpetual state of emergency. We want to be in a state of growth. And that's why people like Brother Mbwebe is important. Why I wanted to have him on, to let you all know that there's someone you can go to who's thought these things out. And I have used the brother's tactics, particularly credit line increases every 6 months. Call the credit card company and get them to increase your credit. So now you have a bigger pool of money to work with. You can talk about that a little bit, bro?
Yeah, I mean, credit line increases, and that's the thing about credits revolving, and that it increases. So you may have, $2,000 worth of credit right now, but if you work certain taxes that I'd love to share with you, is that you can move that line up to $10,000 quickly within a few months. And what that means is, the strategy simply is, if you handle it, with care, you're responsible with it, and you start to understand the importance of that credit score, that when you do apply for credit in your next point of application, which roughly should be every 6 months, getting a new credit card. And that's the thing. People have the conceptual idea of, why do I want more credit? That's going to create more issues. It's also going to give you more cushion and opportunity to deal with anything that may come. And that's the thing that we have to think about, that Grant and the ant and the grasshopper, that thinks about winter coming. Like, what happens when you're in a situation? We're in the days of a new recession. Inflation, costs are going up, and money isn't, as far as paychecks. So you still need to have the standardized way of living. How can you pay for these things? No one wants to put it on credit, but to have it in case of is a good place to be in, opposed to not having it at all. So when you're using credit and you're getting new credit cards every 6 months, each new credit card, with the improvement of your credit score, you'll find that $2,000 line you got last time, it'd be $5,000 this time. And then what the cards you do have, if you do what's called credit line increases, so for every card you have, every 90 days, you're calling in for a new increase using the term soft pull, which doesn't make them check your credit report, which will be an inquiry, which hurts your score. Then every time you do a credit line increase, you can see that line jumping from, again, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. I went from, in my 2017, I had about $1,000 worth of line of credit. In 6 months, I had over $10,000. Now I'm approaching nearly $200,000 in line of credit. So my goal is to just never stop. Let's go get $1 million. And
Right.
what can I do with that? In case something happens, an opportunity comes, again, emergencies are opportunities. And then the next level is, we get into the business space of it all. Like, business credit is a whole nother beast. So it really is thinking about, like you said, in America, this is the only place you can really do that. And if you really want to stop trading your time for money and having money create opportunities for you, this is the best vehicle in place to do it. And again, it doesn't matter what color, gender, age, persuasion. If you know how to work this thing, you can actually free yourself and own your time. And that's the whole thing about life, because we weren't born to do this stuff. We weren't born to work for somebody all our lives. You know what I'm saying? We weren't born to have money issues, which causes trauma, stress, anxiety. These things are in the way of why we were really born to live. So if you want to have that prosperity and having a true definition of your purpose, handle your finances first, and that'll free you up.
How can people sign up for Crypto Woke?
You can go to cryptowokemovement.com.
Mhm.
You can
And
find
it'll
me
be down in the description section for people here, and it'll be also a pinned link in the comment section for the people watching.
Absolutely. You can find me on all social media platforms, as well as Crypto Woke or Ishangi. You can find me there as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Costa Rica.
Yeah, man.
How'd you get into Costa Rica? How'd you start going there? What's the vibe?
So, brethren of mine, they took a trip and came back and was just like talking about how great it was. And I've always traveled. I've been to a lot of Caribbean, and I've never been to Costa Rica. And I was like, yeah, let's just do it. So when I went, the thing that really got me was when we landed and we drove into the town of Puerto Viejo, and it was about 8 or 9 of us.
Around what year was this?
This was 2011, 2012. No, 2010, I think it was 2010.
Okay.
And when we got out of the van, it looked just like Jamaica. It looked just like Jamaica, but like 20 years behind. Because at that time, the only music they played reggae was Bob Marley. They didn't play nobody else. It was just Bob Marley everywhere I went, Bob Marley. And when we got out, you hear this patois. And they were just like, welcome family, you know what I mean? And I was like, whoa, that was my first experience. The first communication was.
So it wasn't in Spanish, it was English patois.
Yeah, it's English patois. And I was just like, okay, you know what I'm saying? Like, because I'm not very well versed in Spanish. And so I was intimidated about, okay, the language barrier. But, when we flew into San Jose, you saw that. But then we drove 4 hours down to the Caribbean coast and pulled into Cahuita. And then we went into, we stayed right in between Cahuita and Puerto Viejo. And just the pristineness of it, the greenness of it, it creates its own atmosphere, doesn't have a militia, and the fact that, and I don't know if you know about this, but there was this on the Discovery Channel, they did an excavation and found an African origin presence in the depths, in the waters of the sea out there. So there is yet another African connection in Costa Rica, originated wise. Now, what people may figure out is that the African presence that's in Costa Rica now is mainly coming from Jamaica, because the workers work with the Chinese to build the railroads, and the bank that was paying them, the guy swindled them out of the money. And so the folks were then paid in land. So a lot of folks that were from Jamaica, they just never went back. They stayed.
And that's
So
where that patois was coming from.
exactly. And it's
Yeah.
really only an hour a boat ride away from Jamaica. So it's right there. You know what I'm saying?
Is it
So they
really
know,
just an hour? It's an hour from Jamaica?
yeah.
I didn't realize that. I didn't know
Boat
Costa
ride,
Rica was that close. It's an
yep,
hour boat ride from Jamaica?
yep.
I didn't realize that.
It's that close. And then you have Panama, because down by the Caribbean coast, Panama is 20 minutes away. So you're crossing into Panama is easily, and so that
Right. And there's a lot of Caribbean people in Panama as well.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So to me, that was like, this is yet another bridge to, Africa. What I loved about Limon, which is the capital, I'm sorry, not the capital, but it is the main city that is in the Caribbean coast. It's like Flatbush. You know what I'm saying? It was like, I really feel like I was in the Caribbean Flatbush as far as the
Mm.
Black, all of our people that were there. And when they had this annual parade, uh, they know they're winning. And even the Bribri, which are the natives there, they acknowledge their African connection. And they're wearing kente, they're wearing, printed cloth. And so it's just like interesting to see this, because in the other parts of Costa Rica, especially San Jose and even in the Atlantic and the northern region has been completely gentrified by white folks and Germans and folks from Britain. But in the Caribbean coast, they tell you don't go there. They
Mm.
tell you to stay away from the Caribbean coast. And I'm like, I'm going there. That's exactly where I'm going, where you think I
Right.
shouldn't go. And I see why, because this is the one area where it's most lush.
Mm.
Uh, again, it's pristine. There's laws in place. You will not find a Trump Plaza or Marriott Hotel or
Mhm.
McDonald's. So none of those franchises are allowed in that
Okay.
region. And everything is it's just so much more beautiful,
Yeah.
for that very
And the
reason.
cost of living is a lot cheaper, huh?
Oh, extremely. Yeah, much. And it's getting better, even though with tourism coming, we bought land out there, and the land is appreciated immensely, and the
Mm.
value. I think it's some 20% annually.
Okay.
And so there's still tourism that's coming, people are coming and checking it out. But I love the fact that, to me, that's my second home. And that's I intend to have build a home there and spend a great part of the year in that
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
beautiful.
yeah, man,
Yeah, I hear it's like really like a nature place, man. Like,
for real.
I mean, like beautiful
If you
birds, beautiful sunrises, sunsets,
yeah,
rainforest type vibe, green and yeah.
if you
And I've
appreciate
heard that they're actually very nice people too, the Costa Ricans.
yeah, if you
And
appreciate if you appreciate nature, you appreciate, because the saying is pure vida, pure life. That's the saying. Everything
mm,
is pure, everything is natural, and everything is easy living.
mm,
There's no rush and bust. Everything has that true Caribbean vibe. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
going there, I feel automatically at home. You embrace it no matter where you come from, and the opportunities there are immense, because they're looking at folks coming from the States to help them with things, and in exchange, I'm being taught like herbal remedies, the
mm,
origin of things, the medicinal purposes of plants. I mean, and these things are just immaculate. I mean, the housing isn't like necessarily a four corner, four walled homes. There's outdoor kitchens, there's outdoor living rooms, there's,
right.
you're out there with the elements,
The
and
outdoor showers and all them
it's,
type of
yeah,
vibes.
it's fire, man. I love being out there, man.
So you went there the first time you fell in love with the place, then you started doing tours for other
Yeah,
people.
yeah. So of the group when we went, a few of us decided that we wanted to show other people. So we decided to create a business of doing tours, and we did tours for about 6 or 7 years, bringing people out there twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year, doing retreats and giving exposure. This was before it really became popular. Now a lot of people are still doing tours, but
Hmm.
so it's kind of saturated.
Hmm.
But the one thing that I found was the challenge was, as much as we wanted to sell, I mean, so we had connections with all of the natives, and they were like, look, if we can't give the land to our children, because they want to come to America, they
Hmm.
weren't going to sell it to foreigners. So
Right.
we had direct access to land at, not the gringo prices, you know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Right.
They would give
Right.
us the inroads.
Right. Because you develop real human relationships. Yeah.
Exactly. But the challenge was bringing people over to see this thing. People are in the, because passports is, within the last 5 or 6, 10 years, maybe we just started getting passports. So people are too busy traveling and they're not thinking about where they travel and invest. As you said, wherever you go, what can I do? Can I do business here? People aren't even on the level yet. They just want to get out of America. So we found a lot of people that we bring, even though we're presenting these opportunities, people don't have the funds. They don't
Right.
have the money right. So that's again where crypto will came into play as far as, okay, well, let's get our funds correctly so that when we do go and visit these spots, wherever they are, I got money to put down on it right then and there.
Right.
You know what I'm
So
saying?
in the area that you're talking about, the area where the Caribbean people are on the coast, I'm sure the beaches are beautiful there and all that, man. How much is land going for? Like an acre of land? Like, I mean, I
So
know there's ranges depending on, the location, but like, you
yes,
know what I'm saying? Like, what's
yeah,
the average type of price we're seeing for land?
you might with development, meaning road, you know what I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
if there's any water that it's being partitioned so it's not
Mm-hmm.
flooding, because it does rain a lot there, but you'll find it rains in the morning, then it's gone by afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
It gets dark at 6 o'clock every day. But you're going to pay anywhere between $2 to $4 a hectare. So
Two
it'll
to
go by
four
acre.
dollars?
Yeah, $2 to $4 a hectare.
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, no, not a
I'm sorry.
hectare. A hectare is
Yeah,
2.5 acres, right?
yeah.
You're
I'm
talking about
sorry.
a square foot,
Yeah, square meters. My
square
bad.
meters. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
they're
my
doing
bad.
meters there.
Yeah.
$2 to $4 per square meter.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not that bad, especially if it's developed. Now, if you're getting raw land, it'll be
Mm-hmm.
cheaper. But a lot of the land that is available is more so upper in the hills, closer to the water is, more
Mm-hmm.
populated and higher, obviously, because of the proximity. But we purchased land that a little bit off the coast, just roughly not even a mile walk away. And the land that we bought in 2014 is already appreciated over uh I think we've got a net profit of over 200,000
Mm-hmm.
since we did it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So people are going to be developing and moving more into the hill space because of, the growth. But there's a
Okay.
lot happening on that area because Limon, they're putting an airport in that area.
Yeah, so
Because,
that the price of the land is going to appreciate. So it's
absolutely.
a good time to buy before the airport comes up, right?
100%.
So yeah, we're
100%.
looking at 1 acre is about 4,000 square meters.
Mm-hmm.
So $2 to $4 per square meter. We're looking at 8,000 to $16,000 per acre, which
Yeah.
isn't bad.
Yeah.
Which isn't bad at
You can,
all. In the
you can
United
pretty
States, in a lot
much,
of places, they're trying to sell an acre for $250,000.
exactly. And you can put pretty much primarily, and the further you're way off, from the city limit or the coastal area,
Hmm.
you can be totally off grid if you want. You can put a
Yeah,
container home there, you can put up solar, and you can run off, create your own grid,
yeah,
which is the work that we're doing. And that's the point, is that, figuring out the money that I have here, where can I take that and put it to real good use?
yeah,
And
man.
putting it in places like these is, that's your getaway. That could be your reason for leaving America, or
Yeah,
having that spot that you spend 3 or 4 months out of the year at, and then
right,
you
right.
Airbnb it the rest of the time.
And when's the next time you'll be in Costa Rica?
I'm looking to go in February, March.
Okay. If I'm on
February.
this side in the country, man, I definitely want to hop over there with you.
Absolute. And then the goal for me is I'm trying to get, because I haven't been there since COVID was lifted. So my plan for 20, after I'm moving as well, I'm leaving New York, but once I make the move, I'm looking to go there also in August.
Okay.
Because they have this dope festival out there,
Oh yeah.
and it's a great place to rub elbows with movers and shakers out there that would definitely, the work that you and I are doing, man, they're ready for stuff like that. So,
Okay. That's good.
that would be
What's the
awesome.
name of the festival?
I want to say Festival de Negro.
Okay.
So it's a
Festival
week.
of Black Folks, Black
Yeah.
People Festival. So
Yep.
is it like music and food and vibes type of way?
Yeah, just imagine out here in New York, when we have the annual parade, the Labor Day
Oh, okay,
parade.
Labor Day parade.
Got
That's like a,
floats, you
yeah.
got all the floats.
It's
It's
almost
it's
like
a
a carnival type of vibe.
absolutely, and it's a
Oh, okay.
week. It lasts
And
for a
that's in
whole,
August,
yeah, end of
last week of
August.
August.
Yep,
Okay.
into Labor Day.
Okay,
Yep,
that'll be the end of mango season, so that'll be a good time for me to go.
yeah, man, you love it.
What's the mango game looking like in Costa Rica, man?
I gotta look because the main thing that I've been involved in is cacao. So we've been,
Oh, we're doing cacao.
we grow a lot. One of my brethren's, he has a cacao farm. They make a lot of chocolate out there. They
Mm.
shot a lot of chocolate in Switzerland comes from Costa Rica.
Oh, okay.
So it's that, and then I mean, pretty much there's this one brethren I work with. He's creating a food forest. So he's all about, you know, enabling scaling basic, because Costa Rica is known for bananas, but they also have all these other exotic fruits, you know what I'm saying? So this is a great place to really get your gardening on, man. Like I look to grow as many trees as possible, fruit trees, mango,
Mm.
avocado, as
Yeah,
much as I can, because this is conducive because of
yeah,
the weather is self-regenerated, has its
yeah,
own atmosphere, you know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
I
So
mean,
it's
it's a forest. Like it's
true green.
it's a yeah
Yep.
green
Rainforest.
forest jungle, man.
Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that, man. I went to El Salvador, that same area, and I had a
Hmm.
really good time, man. It was really eye-opening trip for me.
I need to hit the
And
next one with you. I definitely got to hit
yeah,
that
yeah,
next one.
yeah. I mean, we can,
Yeah.
I think what we could do is when we go to Costa Rica, we can take a trip to El Salvador.
Word.
They're really close to each other. And
Yeah.
then I mean, El Salvador is a must if you want to check out the whole Bitcoin
Yeah.
economy. That
Exactly.
was eye-opening for me to actually
Mhm.
see the economy working off of Bitcoin. I booked my hotel and bought food and everything with Bitcoin. I mean, I bought this shirt with Bitcoin.
Word.
You know what I mean? So it's like
Mhm.
I saw it in real life in the Lightning Network, and you can just do transactions instantaneously, and the
Mm.
fees were like hundreds of pennies on a dollar. It's
Word.
much better than using a credit card. So I
Absolutely.
saw the possibilities, and hopefully African countries will start to adopt that. But um, yeah, I would love to go to Costa Rica and be your guest there, and I would
Yeah.
love to take you to El Salvador and show you around from some of the relationships I made there. And
I got you.
I'm sure you know some real good people in Costa Rica.
Yeah, I do,
Um,
man. Like,
yeah,
we'll be taken care of. Trust. We will
yeah,
be taken
man.
care of. When we go out there, it's beautiful. I mean, it's my second home. I want it to be, I want to upgrade that to be in the first. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just, yeah, I can't speak more about it, bro.
Yeah,
We got
yeah.
to get
So
there. I want you to see it for sure.
yeah, yeah, we're gonna circle back on that, man. And I definitely want to have you on the show again because there's so much more that we can talk about.
Yeah, man.
We've been on for 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's how
And
fast this thing goes,
we
man.
really, yeah, we just been touching on, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But that's how I like it to be. I like it to be conversational. And since this is your first time on the show,
Yeah.
the listeners and the watchers get familiar with you, then we can get into more topics without having to do your origin story. You know what I mean? But I like to do everyone's origin story. All superheroes have origin stories. So I want to get that out the way and we move into the other things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when they go to your website, they can sign up for your course. What else can they get on your website? Can they download, can they pay for any digital files for
Yes.
educational reasons or anything and purchase your book and all of that? Can you get into that as we
Yeah,
close
man.
out?
Yeah, you can all of my books, even you can go to Ghetto Times and you can get all of my books that I've written about here. A few of them, as I mentioned, Who is the Boule, Analytical Cogitations, and Apothecarian. If you go to CryptoWokeMovement.com, you have access to not just the book, audiobook as well. You also have access to manuals that I'm creating, DIY manuals, self-help manuals on like credit building, credit restoration, business line, how do you start a business line of credit, trust, like information that's going to be liberating into you in your path towards becoming financially literate and sustainable using these new methodologies that these are self-help and quick learners. So, you're going to find an array of material that's available in addition to, interviews like this. I'm actually developing a podcast as we speak right now. It's called WTF podcast, and it doesn't mean what the F, it means ways to freedom. We're going to be talking about all types of things in regards to finances, spirituality, metaphysics, etc. Because again, this conversation, once you free yourself, now the thing is, what do you do with this time? And I'm really focused again on that dash. What are things I'm going to implement tangibly in this life? And you can do that when your time is free. And again, to get your free time is to get these finances in order. So you'll find an array of topics and different products when you go to cryptowealthmovement.com.
Yeah, man. And I would like to say to the listeners, like, this is very real. Like, none of this is theoretical, because the brother trained me in some aspects of leveraging credit, and particularly with the credit line increase play that he has, and he spells it out, and exactly how you call them and what you say to them and everything. He spells it all out, and I followed it to a T. I took a Monday morning and I took an hour to call all my credit card companies and ask for a credit line increase. And when I was done, my credit limits cumulatively increased to about $55,000 to $60,000 with just 1 hour of applying what the brother taught me. That I got an extra $60,000 increased in my credit that I could use for whatever businesses that I'm doing, and hustles that I'm doing by using cash that's readily available to me. And without the brother's instructions, I wouldn't have been in that position. And this allowed me to do some things in terms of construction and buying equipment in Africa for some of my projects that I'm doing over in Africa. So this brother has been an indelible piece of the puzzle in terms of forwarding my financial movements. And so I just want to personally big up and thank the brother, from brethren to brethren, in terms of what you've done for me and the advice and the direction you've given me, that it's not theoretical, it's real. So I'm just saying to the people, and anyone who knows me, people watching my show, I don't big up who don't need to be bigged up. And I don't, like, I don't deal with too much theory. I deal with practical, because it's a practical world that we have to live in. And so I give priority to people who are practical. Let's put it that way. And so I'm just letting you know that if you contact the brother, you go to his websites. What is that? theghettotimes.com?
Yeah, DAGHETTOTYMZ.com.
And then also cryptowokemovement.com.
Correct.
Right. And it'll all be below for y'all who, need to just click the link, but it'll be on the page description for you all. But I'm just letting you all know that I can vouch for the brother's brilliance, and I can vouch for him being able to go from A to B in terms of you having a financial issue to you no longer having a financial issue, and having tactics and strategies to increase your financial position. It's worked for me. We haven't even talked about credit score, things that you can do. We'll get into all of that, probably maybe next month we just have you on and you can just take the stage and start talking about different strategies. But now that, the listenership knows who you are and knows your story, we can have you on to just give some tidbits of information on different topics. And I think it'd be good for the audience, just for everyone to step up their game. So I just wanted to just say big up to you, bro. You've helped me tremendously, and I think you'll be of great service to the other brothers and sisters and other people who watch the show. This is something that everyone can do, particularly if you living in the United States. This is something that you all can do, and the brother has that. He has the answers. It's not just conspiracy theory stuff and stuff that you can't, information that's not actionable. You know what I mean? Like, once you find out about the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, then what?
Right.
It has to be actionable. So he's telling you exactly the phone numbers of who to call for the credit agencies and the credit card people, when to call, what day to call, what time is the best time to call, and what to say to them. He's saying all that type of stuff. So this is the type of brother y'all want to really link up with and increase your positions, you know? So it's been a pleasure and honor of having you on, man. I'm gonna let you close out with anything you want to say, anything you want to let the people know. The floor is yours.
All right, man. Madase Pa for the opportunity, man. This is the time flew, you know what I'm saying? But that's how it is when we be reasoning, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just flows. But I just want to first of all, give thanks, for the work that you're doing, brother, because again, you've inspired me to make my side of the knife, iron, sharpen it, keeping it just as sharp and if not more. And you continue to elevate me just by watching and listening and learning, and to be in this space and talk with you for the hours that we've been doing it, man. This is therapeutic. That was my therapy for the day. You feel me? So I give thanks.
I had to interrupt you when you said therapeutic. Talk about financial therapist. Talk about that, because that's huge. That's big.
Yeah, man.
So I'm not gonna let you close out until you talk about that part. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing for me is, we're talking about behavior. You know what I'm saying? We have therapy for, emotional issues and stress and all these anxieties that we're facing. But the one thing I found that is not included in what causes these anxieties is finances. A lot of the arguments that we have and breakups have to do with finances. A lot of the anxieties with inflation and, money is at the core of all of this. So it dawned on me one day that, why not look at this as a psychosis, because so many people are dealing with this, dealing with the lack of finances and trying to get through it, trying to manage it and trying to deal with these stress triggers. So for me, I think financial therapy is the common denominator to mental health, to economic health, to relation building, to the way you perceive yourself. And because we've been tied into this grid of, working for someone, as we discussed earlier, how susceptible and vulnerable you are, and exposable we are to working for someone else, these things and add to the anxiety, the pressures, the what's the other word I want to say? The midlife crisis that a lot of us go through because we feel like we've lived a life unfulfilled. So I came up with this concept of looking at finances from a therapeutic perspective. How do we address these and see that it's not just what you're going through, that it's systemically designed? And in doing that, we get to face ourselves in the mirror and see that it's not my fault I'm in a situation I'm in. After I know and I don't do anything about it, it is. But the point is, let's start looking at finances from a self-awareness and self-care perspective, so that we can alleviate a lot of these anxieties that's been transferred down generation to generation, because we all started with zero in our pocket. We didn't get endowments or checks when we was 18. So how can we now understand that and use therapy as a way to make ourselves financially well? So that's something that I also offer. I do sessions, actually, introductory sessions, 30 minutes to 60-minute sessions. All that information is on my site, where we actually assess. I look at your situation, I hear your story, and then I come up with some ready-made solutions to get you on a path of becoming financially sustainable.
Excellent, man. Excellent. I love it. You're doing much necessary work, man. You're doing very necessary work, because, at some point, people are going to have to realize that you have to master this issue called money.
Yeah.
This is a problem that every human being has to deal with. You need to solve your money problem. And people try to downplay it and talk about capitalism and this and that and what have you. But at the end of the day, all the people who got a critique of capitalism still got bills that they have to pay. They still go to the grocery store and buy food. They still, pay for this or pay for that. And even the phone that they're using to type about capitalism, they have to pay for that. So it's like, we all have to solve our money problem, because once you solve the money problem, life is completely different. Most of us don't even know who we are, because we don't know what life is like without having to worry about money. We don't even know our true personalities. Like, once you solve your money problem, you get to actually see who you really are, good or bad. You know what I'm saying? And so, give thanks, brethren, for the service that you're providing, and you certainly should be well compensated for everything that you're doing because it's transformative, it's life changing. And I know that the listeners will take it very seriously and go check you out on your website, cryptowokemovement.com and theghettotimes.com as well. And, you know, let's just stay tuned for part 2 when you come back, and we'll get into more of the specific tactics that you deal with so that it can be educational for everyone listening, and that's something that they can employ, and then contact you to get more in depth with the approaches and the tactics that you use to get these types of results, because it certainly worked for me, and you know, I'm happy. So give thanks, bro.
Yeah, man.
All right. All right, listeners, stay tuned for the next time we come on, but I hope you all enjoyed this. I certainly did, you know, so bless up everybody.
Bless.
Bless.